Chapter 637 Chu Chun, puzzled, reunites with his family. It could be said that Chu Chun was completely dumbfounded right now, because he had never heard the name Great Xia Empire, or did he know that he was the eldest young master of the Great Xia Empire. After all, the strength of his family members that he knew of was not great. Furthermore, and more importantly, his family was the prince of Zhenbai's estate in the eastern region. As he thought of this, the confusion in his eyes intensified. When the quasi-emperor level expert of the Great Xia Empire saw the confusion in his eyes, he instantly understood that Chu Chun did not know about the current Great Xia Empire, nor did he know about his current situation. Thus, the quasi-emperor level expert of the Great Xia Empire slowly turned his gaze toward Chu Chun. The Great Xia Empire is the most powerful force in the world today, and the emperor of our Great Xia Empire is the eldest young master's biological younger brother. This quasi-emperor level expert's explanation made Chu Chun even more confused, because he had not expected that his younger brother had actually created such a formidable Great Xia Empire. It even made him feel somewhat incredulous. At the same time, a look of daze was present in his eyes. It was as if he was currently pondering his own situation. Since the eldest young master has awakened, please accompany me to see the master and madam. This quasi-emperor level expert naturally saw the dazed look in Chu Chun's eyes, so he spoke to Chu Chun with a hint of helplessness. After speaking, he made a gesture of invitation. Seeing this, Chu Chun knew that the only way to resolve the confusion in his heart was to go and see his father, the prince, and his imperial consort mother, whom he had not seen for a long time. Therefore, he followed behind this quasi-emperor level expert, slowly walking toward the outside of the time pagoda. In just a blink of an eye, the two of them had appeared outside the time pagoda. Having appeared outside the time pagoda, the two instantly materialized inside the imperial palace of Chang'an City in the Great Xia Empire. Looking at the vast and majestic imperial palace of Chang'an City, the confusion in Chu Chun's eyes intensified, because the eastern region could not possibly have such a terrifyingly magnificent imperial palace. Furthermore, in his view, the spiritual energy of the eastern region could not be this formidable. As he thought of this, the confusion in his gaze grew even stronger. However, at this moment, he was following the quasi-emperor level expert of the Great Xia Empire behind him, slowly heading toward the Prince of Zhenbai's estate located within Chang'an City. Naturally, the Prince of Zhenbai's estate was currently situated inside the imperial palace. Because Chu Long wanted to accompany Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran, the Prince of Zhenbai's estate had naturally remained within the imperial palace. And today, Chu Yanran and Chu Wushuang were also in the Prince of Zhenbai's estate. Besides Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran, Qing Yao and Luo Tianyi were also naturally in the Prince of Zhenbai's estate at this time. After all, they were the Great Xia Empire's only two imperial consorts. Therefore, Chu Long and the others held great affection for them. Laughter and joy filled the Prince of Zhenbai's estate at this moment. The two little ones, Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran, were currently following beside Chu Long. Instead, he was not playing chess as he usually did. Instead, he was constantly playing with the two little ones. As for Qing Yao and Luo Tianyi, they were following beside Feng Shiran. Chu Tianxiong looked at his two grandsons with affection in his eyes. Just as everyone was immersed in joyous laughter, a series of knocks came from outside the door. Chu Long then slowly turned his gaze toward a guard standing beside him. Although this was a guard of the Prince of Zhenbai's estate, his strength had already reached the Saint King realm. Therefore, his strength was not weak within the entire Prince of Zhenbai's estate. Upon seeing Chu Long's gaze, the guard instantly understood. He quickly went to the gate and slowly opened it. What came into view was Chu Chun, the former eldest young master of the Prince of Zhenbai's estate, and the quasi-emperor level expert of the Great Xia Empire. As the gate slowly opened, Chu Chun's eyes held a look of anticipation and hope. When he saw the familiar scene and the familiar individuals within the Prince of Zhenbai's estate, his eyes instantly became moist. After all, he did not know how many years it had been since he had seen his grandfather and his father. At this moment, he could not even speak. He looked gently toward his grandfather and father, and of course his mother. Chu Long naturally looked toward the door at this time. Of course, it was not just Chu Long. Chu Tianxiong and the others instantly fixed their gazes on the door as well. When they saw the black-haired Chu Chun, expressions of joy instantly appeared in their eyes. Chu Tianxiong's hands even trembled with excitement. After all, he only had two descendants in his lifetime. One of them was Chu Chun standing before him. Although Chu Long was still able to maintain his composure at this moment, it could be sensed that his eyes also held a hint of joy. The joy of reuniting after a long separation. Grandfather, Prince, Imperial Consort Mother. Chu Chun slowly walked forward, his eyes filled with surprise and shock, and naturally, a look of daze still lingered in his gaze. He desperately hoped that this was not a dream, but reality, that he was seeing his prince father and imperial consort mother. Chu Tianxiong slowly walked forward at this moment. He looked at his son with affection in his eyes. Then, he gently patted Chu Chen's shoulder. "It's good that you've recovered. It's good that you've recovered." He repeated this phrase, and the joy in his eyes could no longer be concealed. Chu Long, standing beside him, also reacted at this moment. He then looked toward Chu Chun once more. After hearing his prince father's words, the expression on Chu Chen's face became even more joyful, and his entire body began to tremble. Naturally, the eyes of everyone else in the Prince of Zenbai's estate were now focused on Chu Chun, the former eldest young master of the Prince of Zenbai's estate. After all, no matter what, he was still the former eldest young master of the Prince of Zenbai's estate. Grandson, Chu Chun greets grandfather. He then suppressed the excitement in his heart, slowly approached Chu Tianxiong, cupped his hands in salute, and spoke. At this moment, the dazed look in his eyes slowly dissipated. Even so, a hint of confusion remained in his mind, because he had not expected that the former Prince of Zenbai's estate had actually transformed into the current Great Xia Empire. Although he did not know how powerful the Great Xia Empire was, any force that could be called an empire needed to possess at least a quasi-emperor level expert. One must know that a quasi-emperor level expert was considered a peak existence even within the Holy Land he had once belonged to. Therefore, he naturally regarded the current Great Xia Empire with great seriousness, and even some confusion. Chapter 638, Chu Fan's bewildered expression and the excitement of the Chu family. Chu Long stood up and held Chu Chen's hand after hearing Chu Chen's words. His eyes were filled with emotion and joy. The last time he saw Chu Chan was when Chu Chan was unconscious. Besides that, it was when Chu Chan was a child. Little Fan said you would need half a year to recover, but I didn't expect you to wake up early. It's good that you've recovered. Then Chu Long slowly said to his grandson in front of him. After he finished speaking, the worry on his face instantly disappeared. Although Chu Fan had initially told him that his elder brother would probably need half a year to recover, everyone in the family was very worried about Chu Chen at that time. Now that he had recovered so quickly, it naturally made Chu Long and others excited. Yes, it seems that Brad also makes mistakes in his predictions sometimes. Chu Tianxiong also recovered from his joy at this moment, then cursed him with a smile on his face. However, regarding his youngest son, his face still showed a hint of pride. After all, everything in the Prince of Zenbai's estate now was established by his youngest son. It could even be said that his current noble status was brought about by his youngest son. Now, no matter where he went, he would be respected. Moreover, what was more important was that his cultivation had reached the Saint King realm. One must know that having reached the Saint King realm, his lifespan had already reached 5,000 years. That is to say, even if he lived to 5,000 years old, there wouldn't be much of a problem. What's more, he knew that his strength could still continuously improve. Thinking of this, the pride on his face naturally couldn't be contained. Feng Shiran rolled her eyes at Chu Tianxiong after hearing his words. Then, she slowly came to Chu Chen's side. It's good that you've recovered. You don't know that after your brother heard that something happened to you in the central region, he directly led the army to the Holy Land where you were to seek justice for you, almost directly going to war with the Holy Land. Then she slowly looked at Chu Chun in front of her and said, as she spoke, there was still a hint of worry in her heart. After all, when she first heard that Chu Fan was going to the central region to fight the Holy Land there, she was still very worried. It seems she only learned all of this later. So, even now, she was still blaming Chu Tianxiong. And Chu Tianxiong, hearing her words, scratched his head somewhat awkwardly. After all, he was initially afraid that his eldest son would truly perish, which was why he hadn't told this news to his father and his wife. Moreover, what was more important was that Chu Fan had faced a Holy Land in the central region. Although the Great Xia Empire's strength was already not weak at that time. But no matter what, the Holy Lands of the central region were lofty existences in their eyes. So at that time, he was also afraid that his youngest son would not be a match for the Holy Land. That's why he hadn't told this news to his father and wife. And Chu Chan was even more shocked after hearing this news, because only he knew how powerful the Holy Land truly was. And his brother, whom he hadn't seen for over 10 years, actually led an army to pressure a Holy Land. This instantly made him feel incredible. Mother, what happened after Little Fan led the army to the Holy Land? And where is Little Fan now? However, he quickly became worried. After all, only after staying in the Holy Land for so long did he know how powerful the Holy Land truly was. So now he was still looking for his brother's whereabouts. If his brother had rescued him, then there should be a great war between his brother and the Holy Land currently underway. Thinking of this, his face also showed a hint of worry. Don't worry. That brat is currently in the central region, and he should have already conquered the central region by now. Chu Tianxiong naturally also saw the worry on his face, so he waved his hand indifferently and said. After he finished speaking, the pride on his face grew even stronger. At this moment, Chu Wushuang looked at the young man in front of him, who bore some resemblance to his father, with great curiosity. Grandpa, oh, is this uncle? Then he stepped forward, took Chu Tianxiong's hand, and asked Chu Tianxiong, looking at Chu Chen in front of him with a hint of curiosity in his eyes. At this moment, he didn't know who the person in front of him was. Chu Wushuang was only a few years old, so he naturally hadn't met Chu Chen. Little Wushuang, come, Grandpa will introduce you. This is your imperial uncle, who is your imperial father's elder brother. After hearing Chu Wushuang's words, Chu Tianxiong directly picked up Chu Wushuang, then pointed at Chu Chen in front of him, and said to Chu Wushuang. After he finished speaking, a happy smile still hung on his face. And Chu Chen also recovered from his shock at this moment. However, at this moment, he was even more shocked, because he had just heard his father say that Chu Fan was currently in the central region and was fighting a great war there, which instantly made him extremely shocked. And now, after hearing that the child his father was holding was his brother's child, he was even more shocked. He hadn't expected his brother's child to be so grown up during the time he was away. Then he slowly turned his gaze to Chu Yanran beside his grandfather. At this time, Chu Yanran was not as prominent as Chu Wushuang, because Chu Yanran was originally the little princess of the entire Chu family. It could be said that in the entire Great Xia Empire, everyone loved this little princess very much. Therefore, when this little princess saw a stranger, she was naturally not as bold as Chu Wushuang. And as the first imperial prince of the Great Xia Empire, everyone hoped to train Chu Wushuang into a truly top-tier successor. That's why he was so bold. After all, to be the successor of the Great Xia Empire, he not only needed talent. Therefore, Heavenly Secret Master and Zhuge Liang and others were all very attentive to Chu Wushuang. They were all training the successor of the Great Xia Empire. Of course, even Chu Fan was training his son. After all, he had already thought it through when he named Chu Wushuang. The name, unrivaled under heaven, suited Wushuang. As for Chu Yanran, she was the little princess of the Chu family. She didn't even need to cultivate. Chu Fan could find treasures to raise her cultivation. What's more, Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran's talents were also terrifying. Chener, this little one is called Chu Wushuang. That brat hoped he would be unrivaled under heaven, which is why he gave him the name Chu Wushuang. He is also the unrivaled prodigy of our Chu family. Chu Tianxiong then excitedly began to introduce Chu Wushuang in his arms to Chu Chen. After all, Chu Wushuang was his most beloved grandson. Even their Chu family placed all their love on these two little ones. Chapter 639, Chu Chen, Questioning Life, and Chen Jibao's Advice. Meanwhile, Chu Wushuang was continuously sizing up the so-called imperial uncle in front of him. After all, he had never met this so-called imperial uncle of his family. Don't look at Wushuang's young age. His cultivation is considered top tier in our Chu family. After all, Wushuang's talent far exceeds our imagination. At just a few years old, his cultivation has already reached the entering saint realm. However, your brother's people sealed his cultivation because his body currently struggles to withstand this terrifying power, and with this power, he isn't quite accustomed to it. Chu Tianxiong then looked at Chu Wushuang in front of him with a proud expression and said to Chu Chen. After all, his grandson had reached the entering saint realm at just a few years old. One must know that his father, Chu Long, currently only had the cultivation of the entering saint realm. From this, one could see just how terrifying Chu Wushuang's talent truly was. When Chu Chen heard how terrifying Chu Wushuang's talent was, he was also stunned. He hadn't expected the little one in front of him to have reached the entering saint realm. As a saint of a holy land, his strength would only reach the king realm after he came of age. Yet, the little one in front of him had far surpassed his past self at just a few years old. Although he didn't know why his cultivation had risen to the entering saint realm, even so, his cultivation was only on par with the little one in front of him. This instantly made him feel as if this universe had become unfamiliar. The little one beside your grandfather is named Chu Yanran, and she's also your brother's child. She and little Wushuang in my arms are dragon and phoenix twins. Moreover, that little girl's talent is also extremely terrifying, having reached the entering saint realm just like little Wushuang. However, similarly, her cultivation has also been sealed. As the little princess of our Chu family, we all hope she can grow up happily and carefree. So it doesn't matter if she doesn't have cultivation now. Just as Chu Chen was in a daze, Chu Tianxiong once again introduced Chu Yanran's situation to Chu Chen. After hearing Chu Tianxiong's introduction, Chu Chen was stunned once more. He hadn't expected even Chu Yanran's talent to be so frightening. This instantly made him wonder if his supreme bone was fake. one must know that the Supreme Bone was a legendary Supreme Being level talent. But now, in front of the two little ones, he seemed very ordinary. One must know that when he was in the Holy Land, his talent was considered top tier. But now he was being left so far behind by two little ones. Just as Chu Chan was still doubting life. Chu Tianxiong then slowly looked at Qing Niao and Luo Tianyi behind him. Since his son had already awakened, he naturally had to introduce the current members of the family to his son. Qing Niao and Luo Tianyi were originally members of the Chu family. So he naturally had to introduce Qing Niao and Luo Tianyi to his son. These two are your brother's wives, and also the current imperial consorts of the Great Xia Empire. Qing Niao is the mother of the two little ones, and your brother's other imperial consort is named Luo Tianyi. As Chu Tianxiong introduced Qing Niao and Luo Tianyi to Chu Chun, Qing Niao and Luo Tianyi slowly stepped forward. Their eyes held a touch of joy as they looked at Chu Chun. They naturally knew Chu Chen's identity. It was just that they hadn't directly stepped forward to greet Chu Chen at first. Qing Niao/Luo Tianyi greets imperial brother. Their voices were gentle and elegant, like larks passing through Chu Chen's ears. No need for such formality, younger sisters-in-law. Chu Chen looked at the heroic Qing Niao and the tender Luo Tianyi in front of him with a hint of emotion on his face, but he still waved his hand at the two of them. Of course, Chu Chan was also very curious at this moment. He hadn't expected that the little one who used to constantly run behind him had already married and had children. This instantly made him feel emotional about his own life. However, at this moment, he was also very curious. What kind of scene would it be when he saw his brother again? And as Chu Tianxiong introduced the current changes to Chu Chun, the subsequent discussion between Chu Tianxiong and Chu Chen also revolved around the Great Xia Empire. Chu Chan was not particularly familiar with the Great Xia Empire on ordinary days, so Chu Tianxiong had been guiding him to familiarize himself with the entire Great Xia Empire. And just as Chu Chan was awakening, Chu Fan in the Central Region had also completely incorporated the entire Central Region into the territory of the Great Xia Empire with his powerful army. There was no possibility for those so-called empires to stop the Great Xia Empire's advance. Therefore, in less than half a month, the entire Central Region once again became the territory of the Great Xia Empire. This meant that the territory of the Great Xia Empire now covered the entire universe. In other words, the entire universe was now the territory of the Great Xia Empire. At this moment, inside an imperial palace in the Central Region, Chu Fan was leading his army. Standing in front of him were Hua, Zubing, and other marshals. This imperial palace belonged to an empire. However, because the Great Xia Empire had completely taken over this territory, this imperial palace now also belonged to the Great Xia Empire. At this moment, all the marshals and generals looked at Chu Fan with excitement in their eyes. They now knew that the Great Xia Empire's reach now covered the entire universe. Emperor, your subject believes that we should relocate the capital of our Great Xia Empire to the Central Region. Although Chang'an City in the Eastern Region is considered a top-tier capital for our Great Xia Empire, the Central Region is, after all, the center of the four regions. Establishing our capital here would make it easier to manage the four regions. Chun Jibao slowly stepped forward and spoke, looking at Chu Fan. After speaking, his face still held a hint of excitement. Although Chang'an City in the Eastern Region was indeed a capital that only top-tier empires could possess, however, it was not so easy to simultaneously manage the Western, Southern, Northern, and Central regions. Therefore, he suggested establishing the capital of the Great Xia Empire in the Central Region, which would make it much more convenient for managing the other four regions. At the same time, this could better display the strength of the Great Xia Empire. After all, the truly top-tier forces were all in the Central Region, and only here could they truly suppress these holy lands or empires. Of course, these empires had now become imperial dynasties, because only if an empire voluntarily demoted itself to an imperial dynasty could it continue to exist under the rule of the Great Xia Empire. Emperor, your subject believes that Marshal Chen's suggestion is good. Now, our Great Xia Empire needs to suppress the top-tier forces of the entire Central Region, and our enemies are also in the Central Region. So the capital of our Great Xia Empire should be established in the Central Region. Hua Zubing also slowly stepped forward and spoke. After speaking, his eyes still held a sharp gaze towards the distance. Chapter 640 System Rewards. Number of summoning cards possessed, summoning card exchange. The other generals also stepped forward one after another to express their agreement. After all, although the current Great Xia Empire has completely taken down the entire Central Region, they have not truly merged the entire Central Region yet. At the same time, there are still so many top forces in the Central Region. Therefore, they naturally need to stay here to guard the Central Region. Thus, if the capital of the Great Xia Empire were placed in the Central Region, it it would be easier to manage the central region. Furthermore, their enemy, the Heavenly God Academy, is also in the central region. So they naturally hope to place their capital in the central region to deter the Heavenly God Academy. In that case, what difference does it make how powerful the Heavenly God Academy is? After all, their true top forces are all here. Therefore, they naturally do not fear the Heavenly God Academy. After hearing the words of the several people, Chu Fan also understood their meaning. At the same time, he also had an idea in his heart. Although Chang'an City in the eastern region was indeed the initial capital of their Great Xia Empire, it is certainly more appropriate to place the capital in the central region now. After all, the central region is inherently the most top-tier major region. Moreover, the Holy Lord of the Holy Land within the central region might not be as peaceful as imagined. In fact, if the army of the Great Xia Empire were to leave the central region, then these Holy Lord of the Holy Land might do other things in private. Of course, what is more important is that the Heavenly God Academy is still in the central region. As long as their Great Xia Empire remains in the central region, no matter how much the Heavenly God Academy wants to stir up trouble, it will not be as easy as they imagine. Since that is the case, then let us build another Chang'an City in the central region. Once constructed, Chang'an City in the central region will be the capital of my Great Xia Empire. Subsequently, Chu Fan directly issued his command. Since a Chang'an City was going to be built here, the capital of the Great Xia Empire would naturally be moved to Chang'an City. After hearing Chu Fan's words, the faces of the other generals showed excited smiles. Subsequently, the general who received this task began to build Chang'an City in the surrounding area. As the most top-tier force in the central region, the scale of the Great Xia Empire's Chang'an City could not be small. Therefore, many people are now continuously working hard to construct Chang'an City. And while Hua, Zhubing, and the others were busy building Chang'an City, the capital belonging to the Great Xia Empire, Chu Fan on the other side returned to his residence. Returning to his residence, he entered his room with a hint of excitement on his face. Then, he immediately opened his system. The system's rewards were lying in the system space, because he unified the entire universe. The system rewards this time were extremely generous. The sheer quantity of summoning cards reached an astonishing level. However, many of the summon characters on the cards were Saint King level and Great Saint level. For example, Chu Fan now possessed hundreds of Saint King level summoning cards in his system space. Because during the Great War with these top forces in the central region, the system was constantly issuing tasks. Therefore, the number of Saint King level summoning cards in his system naturally reached hundreds, and the number of Great Saint level summoning cards alone also reached dozens. For Chu Fan, the effect of these summoning cards was not particularly great. After all, the strength of the people he was about to face was so terrifying. So what was the point of summoning a group of Saint King level expert? After all, the number of Saint King level individuals in his army was not small either. Fortunately, the number of Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards reached 6, meaning he could summon 6 Quasi-Emperor level expert. Moreover, more importantly, there were still 3 Great Emperor level summoning cards. This meant he could now summon 3 Great Emperor level expert. Of course, what was more important was not the number of Great Emperor level summoning cards, but the number of unlimited summoning card he possessed. The number of unlimited summoning card Chu Fan currently possessed had reached an astonishing 5. It must be known that the unlimited summoning card can summon unlimited expert. In other words, the unlimited summoning card might be able to summon the most top-tier Great Emperor level expert, or even a legendary half-immortal rank expert. Therefore, Chu Fan looked at the summoning cards in his system space with anticipation in his eyes. System, can my Saint King level summoning cards and Great Saint level summoning cards be exchanged for Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards? However, after looking at his Saint King and Great Saint level summoning cards, Chu Fan still asked his system directly with a hint of doubt. After asking, there was also a look of anticipation in his eyes. If he could exchange all these summoning cards for Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards, then the number of Quasi-Emperor level expert in their Great Xia Empire would rapidly increase. Moreover, possessing the Time Pagoda, he could use the Time Pagoda to continuously improve the Quasi-Emperor level expert of their Great Xia Empire. Ding! The Saint King level summoning cards, or Great Saint level summoning cards, held by the host can be exchanged for Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards. 4 Saint King level summoning cards, 10 Saint King level summoning cards are required to exchange for 1 Great Saint level summoning card, and the same applies to exchanging Great Saint level summoning cards for Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards. Immediately after Chu Fan's words fell, the system's voice sounded in his mind. At the same time, the system also explained the exchange rules for Great Saint level or Saint King level summoning cards to him. It was the same as the temporary rules he received last time. In other words, if he were to exchange the Saint King level summoning cards he currently possessed for Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards, he would be able to exchange for slightly more than 2 cards. After all, he currently possessed over 200 Saint King level summoning cards. Moreover, besides the Saint King level summoning cards, his Great Saint level summoning cards could also be exchanged for 7 Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards. Therefore, his Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards could reach an astonishing 15 cards, meaning Chu Fan could now summon that many Quasi-Emperor level expert. Furthermore, it was possible that the strength of these Quasi-Emperor level expert could all reach the peak Quasi-Emperor realm. Thinking of this, his eyes were filled with deep anticipation. Ding! Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards can be fused into alternative path to enlightenment summoning cards. Only 3 Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards are required to exchange for 1 alternative path to enlightenment summoning card. Just as Chu Fan was feeling excited, his system sounded in his mind again. Chu Fan, who was already very excited, showed an even stronger look of shock on his face after hearing the system's voice. He had not expected that Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards could actually be exchanged for alternative path to enlightenment summoning cards. In this way, the strength of the Great Xia Empire would rapidly increase. Chapter 641, Summoning an Unconventional Dao-Achieving Powerhouse. Ning Fei, the leader of the 8 Divine Generals. One must know that the power gap between the Quasi-Emperor level and the alternative path to enlightenment level is not just a little bit. Although Gai Jiuyo could fight an alternative path attainment expert with his peak Quasi-Emperor realm cultivation, it was mainly because Gai Jiuyo was originally an expert who had failed to achieve the Dao. So how could his strength be compared with other Quasi-Emperor level experts? System, convert all my Quasi-Emperor and below summoning cards into alternative path to enlightenment summoning cards. Understanding this point, Chu Fan directly exchanged all his summoning cards. After all, what he needed now were alternative path to enlightenment level experts and Great Emperor level experts. Only this way could the Great Xia Empire's strength be rapidly improved. Thinking of this, he decided to convert all his summoning cards into alternative path to enlightenment summoning cards. Of course, his Great Emperor level summoning cards and unlimited summoning cards naturally could not be converted successfully, because Great Emperor level summoning cards and unlimited summoning cards cannot be exchanged. Otherwise, Chu Fan would definitely convert all these summoning cards into Great Emperor level summoning cards. In that case, the Great Xia Empire's strength would receive an even more terrifying boost. Ding! All the host's Saint Grade, Great Saint level, and Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards have been converted into alternative path to enlightenment summoning cards. The host now possesses 5 alternative path to enlightenment summoning cards and 5 Great Saint level summoning cards. As Chu Fan's words fell, the summoning cards in the system space continuously emitted rays of light. They changed from the initial blue light to purple light, and then to purple gold light. And these summoning cards finally stopped at purple gold. Apparently, purple gold summoning cards belong to alternative path attainment experts. Of course, in addition to these purple gold summoning cards, there were still a few blue summoning cards in the system space. The characters summoned by these blue summoning cards were only Great Saint level. Therefore, the remaining blue summoning cards were naturally Great Saint level summoning cards. Their number was no longer enough to exchange for another Quasi-Emperor level summoning card. Thus, Chu Fan simply ignored them. After all, for him, Great Saint level summoning cards didn't have much use. However, if he acquired more Great Saint level summoning cards in the future, he could convert them into Quasi-Emperor level summoning cards. So Chu Fan naturally planned to keep all these Great Saint level summoning cards. System, directly use the alternative path to enlightenment summoning cards in the system space. Chu Fan looked at the 5 alternative path to enlightenment summoning cards in his system space again and directly gave his final command to the system. Anyway, keeping these summoning cards now wouldn't have much use, so it was better to use all of them. Therefore, he decided to use all these alternative path to enlightenment summoning cards. Ding! Alternative path to enlightenment summoning card used successfully. Congratulations to the host for successfully summoning the alternative path to enlightenment characters Ning Fei, Stone Emperor, Great Accomplishment He Gem and Body, Do Zhan Saint Emperor, and Long Zhantian. After Chu Fan used all these alternative path to enlightenment summoning cards, 5 cards quickly appeared in his system space. And on these purple gold cards, many figures appeared. The first alternative path to enlightenment summoning card surprisingly showed Ning Fei, who, like Chuaning, perished together with a supreme being in that world. His strength was also a top-tier existence. More importantly, his strength had reached a similar level to Chuaning. Although his current strength, like Chuan Ying's, was at the alternative path to enlightenment level, his true strength had already reached the supreme being level. Moreover, he once perished together with a supreme being level expert. From this, one could see how powerful he truly was. However, it was a pity that he was an out-and-out romantic, and his image in the original work was also very perfect. After all, His image in the original pillar was that of a white horse and silver spear, and in his youth, he was even more heroic and spirited. He was also known as an existence who had fought all over the world with no rivals. Of course, he ultimately lost to the undying Heavenly Emperor, but his strength was also recognized by many people. For example, his opponent Chuaning, though the main reason was that Chuaning was a general of the Heavenly Court. Nevertheless, from this, one could see how formidable his strength truly was. As for the second alternative path to enlightenment existence, it was the Stone Emperor. His strength was also considered good among those who had taken the alternative path to enlightenment. And he, like Ning Fei, came from the same universe. The third alternative path to enlightenment was even more interesting. He possessed a physique similar to the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body. The Great Accomplishment Sacred Body possessed the legendary Desolate Ancient Sacred Body. It was also the human race's innate sacred body. Therefore, it could be said that once the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body reached major achievement, it could contend with great Emperor-level experts. Of course, opposite the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body, there was naturally a mortal enemy. That was the Great Accomplishment Heaven Body. This time, another alternative path to enlightenment speaker summoned was the Great Accomplishment Heaven Body. His strength, like the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body, had already reached the major achievement level. More importantly, he also embarked on the path of alternative path to enlightenment. Therefore, the strength of this Great Accomplishment Heaven Body should not be weaker than the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body. I wonder if these two fellows will fight under my command. After all, there's a life-and-death feud between them. Chu Fan was somewhat surprised to have summoned a Great Accomplishment Heaven Body. At the same time, he was also curious whether his Great Accomplishment Sacred Body and Great Accomplishment Heaven Body would fight. More importantly, Chu Fan did not have a very good impression of the Great Accomplishment Heaven Body, because in that universe, the Great Accomplishment Heaven Body ultimately surrendered to the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone and eventually became a Supreme Being from the Forbidden Zone. So he naturally had a somewhat negative impression of the Great Accomplishment Heaven Body. However, since he had already been summoned, the Great Accomplishment Heaven Body could be considered a part of their Great Xia Empire. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't look down on the Great Accomplishment Heaven Body because of that universe. Subsequently, Chu Fan turned his gaze to the fourth alternative path to enlightenment summoner. He just didn't expect that the character he summoned this time was actually the Dozhan Saint Emperor. However, upon seeing the system's explanation, a look of understanding appeared on Chu Fan's face. Initially, he was wondering why the Dozhan Saint Emperor would be an alternative path to enlightenment existence. After all, the Dozhan Saint Emperor was an immortal rank existence. But now, after reading the introduction of this Dozhan Saint Emperor, he understood why this Dozhan Saint Emperor was an alternative path to enlightenment existence. The reason was actually very simple. This Dozhan Saint Emperor was the senior of the Dozhan Saint Emperor in that universe, and his strength was merely at the alternative path to enlightenment level. It had not reached the strength of that Dozhan Saint Emperor who achieved immortal rank. However, even so, he was still a good existence. Chapter 642, the Three-Generation Emperor, the Chaotic Ancient Emperor, the Five-Generation Emperor, the Sword Emperor. However, even so, the strength of the Battle Saint Emperor should be among the top experts in alternative path to enlightenment. I just don't know how his strength compares to the Son of Heaven. After all, among the alternative path attainment experts in his Great Xia Empire, the strongest is the Son of Heaven. After all, the Son of Heaven was once one of the chaotic ancient F4. Therefore, his strength naturally far surpasses those alternative path to enlightenment existences that grew up later. As for the last one, Long Zhantian, he is an alternative path to enlightenment existence in the novel. However, his strength is slightly weaker than the other alternative path attainment experts present. After all, he is just a minor character. Naturally, his strength cannot be compared with these very famous alternative path attainment experts. However, even so, his strength can be compared with that of a general alternative path attainment expert. It can even be said that his strength is a notch stronger than the alternative path attainment expert of the Heavenly God Academy. After all these alternative path attainment experts were summoned, Chu Fan looked at the Great Emperor level summon cards. Because he still has 3 Great Emperor level summon cards now. That is to say, he can still summon 3 Great Emperor level experts. Thinking of this, Chu Fan's eyes also showed a hint of anticipation as he looked at the 3 golden cards in his system space. Because these 3 golden cards can bring him 3 more Great Emperor level experts. Therefore, Chu Fan's face naturally showed an excited expression. Then he rubbed his hands. Then he looked at the 3 golden cards in the system space with an expectant expression. System, use the Great Emperor level summon card. Then he directly used the Great Emperor level summon card in the system space. After all, their Great Xia Empire needs to quickly improve its strength now. Therefore, being able to summon even more powerful existences is also extremely beneficial for the Great Xia Empire. Ding! The Great Emperor level summon card is being used. Congratulations, host, for successfully summoning a Great Emperor level character, Great Emperor Luangura. As soon as Chu Fan finished speaking, the 3 golden cards in his system's space emitted a golden light. Then, a figure slowly emerged from a golden summon card. At the same time, a terrifying chi emanated from the back of this figure. It was as if the entire firmament could not bear his chi. At the same time, a look of vicissitude could be seen on the face of this youthful man. From this, one could feel the strength of this youthful man. Of course, the most important thing is the 4 words, Great Emperor Luangu. After all, from this, one can feel that the strength of this great emperor is not as simple as imagined. And more importantly, Chu Fan knew the origin of this great emperor, because this great emperor is a top expert in a certain novel. Of course, why he knows this great emperor so well is mainly because this great emperor always ended in failure in every major battle when he was young. That is to say, in every major battle, his final outcome was failure. Unlike other great emperor level experts who won every battle, this great emperor lost every battle, but each defeat brought him a huge improvement in strength. And after reaching 100 defeats, he attained the emperor realm. It can be said that this great emperor is the most special one. After all, other great emperors grew up by crushing the prodigies of an era, but he grew up by being crushed by the prodigies of an era. Therefore, Chu Fan naturally remembered this great emperor level expert very well. Then Chu Fan curiously opened the strength introduction of Great Emperor Luangu. The next second, the introduction of Great Emperor Luangu's strength appeared before him. The strength of Great Emperor Luangu summoned this time actually reached the level of 3rd generation Great Emperor. That is to say, the strength of Great Emperor Luangu summoned this time is in the same realm as Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family. Therefore, the Great Xia Empire now also has its own trump card. After all, the strength of the true 3rd generation Great Emperor is still very terrifying. At the same time, after seeing the strength of Great Emperor Luangu, Chu Fan was even more curious about what level the Great Emperor level expert summoned by the next summon card would reach. Then Chu Fan looked at the 2nd golden summon card. Then, a youthful man carrying a long sword slowly emerged from the 2nd golden summon card. A terrifying sword chi emanated from the youthful man. These sword chi seemed to be able to completely cut off the surrounding space and time. Ding! Congratulations, host, for successfully summoning the Sword Emperor. At the same time, the system's voice also sounded in Chu Fan's mind. And after hearing the system's voice, Chu Fan was also very puzzled, because he did not expect that this time he summoned the Sword Emperor. Of course, the most important thing is that Chu Fan had never heard of this name, so now he naturally feels puzzled. However, no matter how puzzled he was, Chu Fan directly chose to open the introduction of this Sword Emperor. Then he found that this Sword Emperor was not as simple as he imagined, because the strength of the Sword Emperor summoned this time reached the level of 5th generation Great Emperor. Such strength can be said to be absolutely the most top expert in the Great Xia Empire. And even in the Heavenly God Academy, he is considered a top expert. You should know that even the Xianyuan family does not have such a powerful existence now. The most important thing is that this Sword Emperor attained the Dao through the legendary Sword Dao. Therefore, although his cultivation is only that of a 5th generation Great Emperor, his strength can fight against the legendary 6th generation Great Emperor. That is to say, Chu Fan summoned a 6th generation Great Emperor level expert's combat power this time. Thinking of this, a look of excitement appeared on his face. He did not expect that the system would give him such a good surprise this time. You should know that at first, he thought that this Sword Emperor was only in the Great Emperor realm, just an ordinary Great Emperor realm. But he did not expect that the strength of this Sword Emperor actually surpassed Great Emperor Luangu. Then he directly became the most top expert in the Great Xia Empire now. Even if Chu Fan does not continue to summon the subsequent summon cards, he is confident that he can break through to the Human Emperor realm. After all, he has 2 such top expert Great Emperor level experts guarding him. How could he still fear the appearance of those top experts from the Heavenly God Academy, disrupting his breakthrough? And more importantly, the strength of these 2 Great Emperor level experts in their Great Xia Empire far exceeds the strength of ordinary Great Emperor level experts, unless all the experts of the Heavenly God Academy make a move. Otherwise, Chu Fan feels that Great Emperor Luangu and the Sword Dao on his side can resist them with just the 3 absolutes. After all, he also knows what level the strength of the 3 absolutes has reached. However, the 3 absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy are still seriously injured and are repairing the injuries in their bodies, so they probably will not make a move to interrupt Chu Fan's breakthrough now. Chapter 643, Summoning the Sixth Emperor, the Spear Emperor, and the Quasi-Emperor's Son. It can be said that Chu Fan now possesses the trump cards necessary to truly confront the Heavenly God Academy. It could even be said that he is no longer afraid, even if the injuries of the Heavenly God Academy's top experts of the Great Emperor level recover. After all, the strength of the two Great Emperor level experts currently summoned by the Great Xia Empire is terrifying. Therefore, he naturally does not fear the recovery of the Heavenly God Academy's top experts of the Great Emperor level. Of course, Chu Fan is currently unsure whether the Heavenly God Academy still harbors other top experts. After all, he does not know whether there are any other Great Emperor level experts in the Heavenly God Academy besides the three top experts of the Great Emperor level who previously drove Xian Yuan Human Emperor out of this universe. Of course, if they are merely Great Emperor level experts, Chu Fan is naturally not afraid. After all, the Void Great Emperor and Hanyu Great Emperor on his side are considered top experts within the Great Emperor realm. However, they have not reached the level of the third-generation Great Emperor or the second-generation Great Emperor. Nevertheless, the strength of the Void Great Emperor and Hanyu Great Emperor is not weak. Afterward, Chu Fan looked toward the third gold-colored card. Only the third Great Emperor level summoning card remained. In other words, the last Great Emperor level summoning card had not yet revealed itself. Thus, Chu Fan watched the final Great Emperor level summoning card with a hint of anticipation in his eyes. Following this, the golden light emanating from this Great Emperor level summoning card continuously spread throughout the system space. At the same time, this golden light quickly covered the entire system space. The next second, a middle-aged man holding a long spear appeared on the golden summoning card. A terrifying chi radiated from the middle-aged man. Simultaneously, a sharp glint was visible in his eyes. His entire being seemed like the most terrifying existence between heaven and earth. Chu Fan only needed one glance at this middle-aged man to feel boundless pressure. It was as if he were a true god of war standing between heaven and earth. Furthermore, this middle-aged man wore a suit of gold-colored armor. This made him look extremely imposing. At this moment, Chu Fan was completely awed by this Great Emperor-level expert. However, he quickly opened the introduction for this Great Emperor-level expert. Ding! Congratulations, host! You have successfully summoned the Great Emperor-level figure, Spear Emperor. He had not expected that the character summoned this time was the same as the one summoned previously. Someone he had never heard of, but his strength had reached an outstanding level. Spear Emperor, whose realm has reached the level of the 6th-generation Great Emperor, and whose strength has reached the terrifying level of the 7th-generation Great Emperor. He could be considered the strongest summoner Chu Fan had brought over this time. After all, the strongest existences in the entire universe right now are those so-called fallen immortal-level experts. However, those fallen immortal-level experts have not appeared for millions of years. Therefore, relatively speaking, the strength of the Heavenly God Academy's 6th-generation Great Emperor experts is considered the peak of this universe. And the strength of the Great Emperor-level expert he summoned this time has already reached the level of the Heavenly God Academy's top expert of the Great Emperor level. Therefore, an expression of excitement naturally appeared on Chu Fan's face. At the same time, he was full of anticipation. Since he had summoned such a terrifying expert this time, it would naturally be very easy for him to achieve a breakthrough to the Human Emperor realm. Moreover, more importantly, he still possesses 4 unlimited summoning cards in his system space. In other words, he might even be able to summon a fallen immortal-level existence now. As he thought of this, a gleam instantly appeared in his eyes. Afterward, he slowly shifted his gaze away from the 3 Great Emperor-level summoning cards. He then leisurely looked toward his unlimited summoning cards again. He wanted to see what level of strength the top experts summoned by the unlimited summoning cards could truly reach. System, use all the unlimited summoning cards in the system space. Following this, Chu Fan directly issued his final command to the system. After speaking, he waited for the system's summon with anticipation in his eyes. Ding! Unlimited summoning card successfully used. Congratulations, host! You have successfully summoned the Quasi-Emperor level figure, Heavenly Emperor's Son. As his words fell, the first unlimited summoning card slowly revealed a beam of purple light. As the purple light slowly faded, a summoned figure appeared within it. Furthermore, the most important point was that this summoned figure's cultivation was only at the Quasi-Emperor realm. This instantly brought a look of disappointment to Chu Fan's face, because he had not expected that the character he summoned would only be a figure in the Quasi-Emperor realm, although a Quasi-Emperor level figure is already quite strong. But for Chu Fan, an unlimited summoning card only summoning a Quasi-Emperor figure truly did not serve much purpose for him. After all, the strength of the quasi-emperor level figures already present in the Great Xia Empire is already formidable. Moreover, Chu Fan naturally knew where this Heavenly Emperor's son came from. It can be said that the undying Heavenly Emperor left everything to this child of his. Furthermore, he possessed top expert cultivate talent. However, he was still ultimately defeated by the protagonist. It can be said that, even with a top expert physique, he could not defeat the protagonist. Thinking of this, a hint of helplessness appeared on Chu Fan's face. He had not expected the one he summoned to be this idiot. Fortunately, the summoned Heavenly Emperor's son's strength had already reached the Quasi-Emperor late stage. This was a notch stronger than his strength in the original work. Moreover, summoning a Quasi-Emperor level existence was still decent. At least it was much stronger than summoning a Great Saint level figure. After all, with the unlimited summoning card, no one knew exactly what kind of existence could be summoned. However, Chu Fan naturally hoped that the summoned figure from the unlimited summoning card would possess even greater strength. He even felt that the strength of the characters summoned by his unlimited summoning card should at least reach the Great Emperor level. Of course, this was just his own thought. Therefore, when the Quasi-Emperor level Heavenly Emperor's son was summoned this time, a look of disappointment naturally appeared on his face. However, Chu Fan looked at the remaining 3 unlimited summoning cards with even greater anticipation. After all, the figure summoned by the first card was already unsatisfactory. Thus, he naturally placed his remaining hopes on the next 3 summoning cards. And as Chu Fan looked toward the second unlimited summoning card below, the color on the second unlimited summoning card also slowly began to turn purple. Seeing this scene, a look of disappointment also appeared on Chu Fan's face. After all, figures summoned by purple summoning cards almost never reach the Great Emperor realm. Chapter 644, Summoning the Undying Emperor and the Azure Emperor. 2 top-tier emperors appear in the world. However, just as Chu Fan's face showed a hint of disappointment, the purple light on this unlimited summoning card slowly dissipated. Following that, a golden light slowly emanated from this unlimited summoning card. As the golden light slowly and completely covered the purple light, the look of disappointment on Chu Fan's face instantly vanished, replaced by a look of anticipation. At the same time, a figure slowly appeared on this unlimited summoning card, which was emitting golden light. Behind this figure, there was also a long saber. The terrifying chi on his body seemed to want to completely cut down this world. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully summoning the Great Emperor level expert, Undying Heavenly Emperor. At the same time, the system's voice also rang out in Chu Fan's mind. This instantly let Chu Fan know the character he had summoned this time. At the same time, a strange smile appeared on his face, because he hadn't expected the character summoned this time to be the Undying Heavenly Emperor. One must know that Chu Fan had just summoned the Heavenly Emperor's son, and the Heavenly Emperor's son was precisely the son of this Undying Heavenly Emperor. Moreover, Chu Fan had just looked down on the son of this Undying Heavenly Emperor, but he hadn't expected that after summoning the son of the Undying Heavenly Emperor, the next summon would actually be the Undying Heavenly Emperor himself. One must know that the Undying Heavenly Emperor was a cunning old fox in that universe. He even entrapped many great emperors to their deaths. Even the Void Realm Great Emperor and others had fallen for his tricks. Therefore, the Undying Heavenly Emperor's reputation in that universe was not particularly good. In fact, it could even be said that his reputation was quite bad. However, no matter what, the Undying Heavenly Emperor's strength was absolutely solid. After all, although the Undying Heavenly Emperor's reputation wasn't great, he was still a top expert. Moreover, he was the first existence to prove the Tao and become a Great Emperor-level expert after Emperor Zun. However, he was also known as the Undying Heavenly Emperor. Of course, this could be considered his own name. And Chu Fan had initially summoned his subordinate, Ning Fei, the first divine general. Later, he even summoned his son, the Heavenly Emperor's son. He just hadn't expected to summon the Undying Heavenly Emperor now. Thinking of this, Chu Fan's face showed a strange expression. He wondered if he would summon the Undying Heavenly Emperor's original wife next. However, the Undying Heavenly Emperor's original wife's strength was not particularly powerful. Chu Fan felt that she probably wouldn't be summoned. Then he slowly clicked on the introduction of the Undying Heavenly Emperor. The strength of this Undying Heavenly Emperor had reached the realm of a 6th-generation Great Emperor. He was in the same realm as the Spear Emperor, whom Chu Fan had just summoned. Moreover, the Undying Heavenly Emperor's strength was also considered a top expert. Among those in the same realm, he belonged to the top tier. Therefore, his current strength should be similar to that of the Spear Emperor. Thinking of this, a comforting smile finally appeared on Chu Fan's face. Now, the Great Xia Empire finally had 2 6th-generation Great Emperors. And besides these 2, they also had a Sword Emperor. The Sword Emperor's strength was only slightly weaker than theirs. So, the Great Xia Empire's strength could now be said to surpass the Heavenly God Academy's apparent strength. He just didn't know what kind of top expert was hidden within the Heavenly God Academy. It could even be said that even the Xianyuan family would not be a match for the Great Xia Empire, unless the Xianyuan human emperor from the Xianyuan family returned. Otherwise, Chu Fan, leading the Great Xia Empire, could directly sweep through the Xianyuan family. Of course, Chu Fan would naturally not lead an army to sweep through the Xianyuan family now. After all, the Xianyuan family had just helped their Great Xia Empire. If the Great Xia Empire were to directly sweep through the Xianyuan family now, it would be a bit unreasonable. Moreover, there was no enmity between the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire. Then, Chu Fan slowly turned his gaze to the third unlimited summoning card. Since the person summoned by the second unlimited summoning card had already made him feel anticipation, the character summoned by the third unlimited summoning card would definitely make Chu Fan feel even more anticipation. Of course, Chu Fan also hoped that the character summoned by the third summoning card would not just reach the Quasi-Emperor realm. If that were the case, Chu Fan would naturally be disappointed. And just as Chu Fan looked on with anticipation, the light on the third unlimited summoning card slowly changed from white to blue, and then directly from blue to purple gold. As the light turned purple gold, the anticipation in Chu Fan's eyes grew even stronger. Finally, this summoning card directly turned golden. Seeing this unlimited summoning card turn golden, a smile finally appeared on Chu Fan's face. At this moment, he also knew that the character he had summoned this time was stable. After all, a golden summoning card summoned a character who was at least a Great Emperor level expert. Moreover, he had gone a long way in the Great Emperor realm. As Chu Fan's gaze fell on this golden summoning card, the system's voice also rang out in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully summoning the Great Emperor level expert, Azure Emperor. And after hearing the system's voice, a long-lost smile finally appeared on Chu Fan's face. Because when he heard the words Azure Emperor, he knew it was stable. Because this person was also a top expert of the Great Emperor level in that universe. Moreover, he was very ambitious. He even wanted to become the legendary immortal with his own strength. Although it ultimately ended in failure, his strength was still considered a top expert among great emperors. Then Chu Fan directly opened the introduction of the Azure Emperor. Soon, the Azure Emperor's cultivation appeared before Chu Fan. Although the Azure Emperor's cultivation was not as good as the Undying Heavenly Emperor and the Spear Emperor, the Azure Emperor's strength had also reached the realm of a third-generation Great Emperor. Perhaps it was because he was born later, which is why he only reached the third-generation Great Emperor realm. However, even so, his strength was on par with Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family. After all, Xianyuan Wudao's current cultivation was also at the third-generation Great Emperor realm. And more importantly, Xianyuan Wudao could use such cultivation to stop the top expert of the Great Emperor level from the Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, with the Great Xia Empire adding another 3-life Great Emperor level expert, it would naturally be able to better deter the Heavenly God Academy. Of course, Chu Fan did not intend to have all the Great Emperor level experts summoned this time appear in this universe, because he had a very terrifying plan in his heart. And this plan would overturn the entire Heavenly God Academy. Of course, for this plan to be perfected, their Great Xia Empire must have even more top experts. Although the strength of the top experts in the Great Xia Empire was already good now. But Chu Fan knew that there was still a need for a fallen immortal level expert. Chapter 645, The Immortal Emperor of the Mortal World, The Rules of this Universe. Thinking of this, Chu Fan looked expectantly at the last unlimited summoning card. He wanted to see if this unlimited summoning card could bring him the effect he desired. At the same time, he also wanted to see if this unlimited summoning card could bring the Great Xia Empire a true foundation. Of course, even if it could not bring a true foundation, Chu Fan would not show much disappointment in his eyes. After all, the characters summoned this time had already surprised him greatly. Under Chu Fan's expectant gaze, the light on the last unlimited summoning card slowly began to change. From the initial blue, it quickly turned gold. While it was gold, the color of this summoning card continued to change even more terrifyingly. Seeing this, a look of shock instantly appeared on Chu Fan's face, because he had not expected that the gold summoning card was not the limit of this unlimited summoning card. However, an expression of excitement instantly appeared on his face. If this summoning card could surpass the gold summoning card, then the strength of the summoned character would definitely far exceed the strength of those just summoned. But just as Chu Fan wore an excited expression, the color of this summoning card finally stopped between gold and rainbow. It turned out that the level above the gold summoning card was the rainbow summoning card. And now, Chu Fan summoning card was situated between the gold summoning card and the rainbow summoning card. This meant that the character summoned this time was absolutely stronger than the undying Heavenly Emperor and the others. Thinking of this, Chu Fan looked expectantly at the summoning card, which lay between the gold summoning card and the rainbow summoning card. Immediately afterward, the light on this summoning card continuously radiated outwards. In the next second, the brilliance on the summoning card began to undergo massive changes. Then, the figure of a middle-aged man, whose body radiated terrifying emperor might, appeared on the summoning card. At the same time, an even more terrifying and majestic aura emanated from behind the middle-aged man. It was as if he was the sole sovereign between heaven and earth. Naturally, at the same time, the system's voice rang out in Chu Fan's mind. Ding! Congratulations, host! You have successfully summoned the Mortal World Immortal rank character, Dizun. After hearing the system's voice, Chu Fan was completely stunned, because he had not expected that the strength of the character summoned this time was no longer at the Great Emperor realm. One must know that the strength of the top expert in this universe, currently, was only at the Fallen Immortal level. Moreover, these Fallen Immortal level experts had not appeared for tens of millions of years. Therefore, many people had never even heard of Fallen Immortal level experts. But now, the strength of the expert he summoned had actually reached the Mortal World Immortal stage. Although Chu Fan had never heard of a Mortal World Immortal existing in this universe. In another universe, the strength of a Mortal World Immortal was comparable to the true Immortal rank. In other words, a Mortal World Immortal belonged to the rank of a top expert at the true Immortal rank. Of course, what was more important was that Chu Fan had not expected the summoned character to be Dizun. Chu Fan naturally understood this Dizun very well. One must know that Dizun had once gathered many people, intending to blast open the path to immortality. However, Dizun's conspiracy was ultimately exposed, and he faked his death. This also allowed the undying Heavenly Emperor to successfully break through to the Emperor realm. And ultimately, Dizun had always been secretly plotting his scheme. Even the final Wuxia Great Emperor had grown up under his observation. If it hadn't been for the final appearance of the protagonist, Dizun's conspiracy would definitely have succeeded. Furthermore, what was more important was that Dizun, who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years, had also successfully entered the Red Dust Immortal realm. Therefore, the Dizun summoned this time was naturally also in the Red Dust Immortal realm. However, upon seeing that Dizun was in the Red Dust Immortal realm, Chu Fan immediately opened Dizun's introduction without any hesitation. After all, he wanted to see the strength of a top expert within the Red Dust Immortal realm. When he saw Dizun's Red Dust Immortal realm, a look of surprise appeared on Chu Fan's face, because he had not expected that the Red Dust Immortal realm would be divided into 9 levels. For example, the current Dizun was at the first realm of the Mortal World Immortal. Of course, even so, it would naturally be very easy for him to crush a Great Emperor-level expert. After learning about the Red Dust Immortal realm, Chu Fan finally showed a long-lost smile on his face. After all, this time he had finally summoned a true foundation. The strength of an expert in the Red Dust Immortal realm could indeed lead to a comprehensive improvement in the strength of the Great Xia Empire. Currently, Chu Fan no longer feared the Heavenly God Academy in the slightest. After all, he had Dizun of the Red Dust Immortal realm holding the fort. How could Chu Fan possibly fear others then? System, are there any other experts in the Red Dust Immortal realm in this universe? However, Chu Fan was still somewhat uneasy and questioned the system. After all, he did not know whether there were other experts in the Red Dust Immortal realm in this universe. If there were, he would need to continue hiding with Dizun. After all, who knew what level the strength of other experts in the Red Dust Immortal realm had reached? Ding! The top expert in this universe is only at the Withered Immortal realm. The system quickly gave Chu Fan a reply. After hearing the system's reply, a smile appeared on Chu Fan's face. At the same time, the worry on his face completely dissipated. If the top expert in this universe was merely an expert at the Withered Immortal realm, then Chu Fan was no longer afraid of those Withered Immortal realm experts in this universe, because the Great Xia Empire was no longer afraid of these Withered Immortal realm experts. System, is the realm division in this world the same as the realm division in the universe I am familiar with? However, Chu Fan was very curious in his heart. He wanted to see the division of the other realms in this universe. So, he looked at the system with curiosity in his eyes. After all, Dizun's Red Dust Immortal realm had already appeared. That meant that the realm division of this universe bore great similarity to the realm division of the universe he was familiar with. Ding! The existence of experts in the Withered Immortal realm is the maximum that can appear in the universe where the host is located. Above the Withered Immortal realm is the true Immortal realm. If the host wishes to become an expert in the true immortal realm, he must go to the immortal realm. As for the realms above the true immortal realm, the host needs to explore them himself. The red dust immortal realm and the true immortal realm are at the same realm, but the strength of an expert in the red dust immortal realm is greater than that of an expert in the true immortal realm at the same realm. The system's voice quickly rang out in Chu Fan's mind. At the same time, the system also explained that experts of the true immortal realm could not appear in this universe. Of course, the main reason was that the materials in this universe were insufficient for an expert to grow to the true immortal realm. The reason Dizun was able to be in the red dust immortal realm was primarily because Chu Fan summoned him. Chapter 6, 46 Preparations before the breakthrough. Chu Fan prepares to break through to the human emperor realm. After summoning Dizun, a being who is immortal world immortal, Chu Fan no longer held any worries in his heart. It could even be said that he had already issued a death warrant to Heavenly God Academy in his heart. After all, no matter how powerful Heavenly God Academy was, at most it only possessed beings belonging to the fallen immortal level. However, the Dizun he summoned this time had reached the mortal world immortal level. It was naturally very easy for an expert of the mortal world immortal level to kill a remnant immortal. Moreover, Chu Fan no longer had any worries about truly achieving the Tao and becoming a human emperor realm expert. His initial worries were instantly swept away. After all, the Great Xia Empire now had the capability to contend against the entire Heavenly God Academy. It could even be said that the Great Xia Empire now showed no signs of falling into a disadvantage, even when facing the combined forces of Heavenly God Academy and the Supremes or remnant immortals in the restricted zones. After all, the number of top experts in the Great Xia Empire now far exceeded that of the Great Xia Empire at its inception. It could even be said that the Great Xia Empire's strength had increased countless times overnight. Of course, the number of these top experts was naturally not particularly large. However, Chu Fan believed that Dizun alone could crush the other top experts in this universe. After all, Dizun had now reached the mortal world immortal. Such a realm could compare to the true immortal level experts in this universe. Moreover, and more importantly, an expert of the mortal world immortal level could surpass the strength of ordinary true immortal level experts. That is to say, within the same realm, the strength of a mortal world immortal level expert far surpassed that of a true immortal level expert. Furthermore, when an expert of the mortal world immortal level reached the perfection realm, they could even fight against an expert of the half-step immortal king realm. This was the strength of a mortal world immortal level expert. Thinking of this, Chu Fan made up his mind that he should break through to the human emperor realm next, although he was already very close to the human emperor realm. However, wanting to further break through to the true immortal realm would require too much time. After all, the true immortal realm was not as simple as imagined. Although Dizun had broken through to the red dust immortal realm, but Dizun had spent hundreds of thousands of years to achieve that breakthrough. He even spent nearly 1,000,000 years to break through to the red dust immortal realm. And Chu Fan naturally did not have that much time to break through to the red dust immortal realm now. Moreover, having broken through to the human emperor realm, if he wanted to break through to the true immortal realm, his strength would be unrivaled within the same realm. Thinking of this, his gaze slowly turned towards the direction of Heavenly God Academy. Of course, Chu Fan did not know where the true Heavenly God Academy was at this time. However, the direction he looked toward was the direction where the top experts of Heavenly God Academy had left. Immediately after, he decided in his heart that he would break through next. At the same time, he also wanted to see if his breakthrough this time could lure out some experts. In this way, their Great Xia Empire could kill these top experts. Of course, Chu Fan did not intend to let all the characters he summoned this time appear before the world. He planned to let those characters he summoned who were not particularly powerful appear before the world. Otherwise, how could those fallen immortal level experts possibly come out? Moreover, there were only 100 years until the path to immortality opened. Therefore, he hoped that during these 100 years, the number of top experts in the Great Xia Empire would continuously increase. And at the same time, he needed these remnant immortals to lower their guard during these 100 years. Thus, he summoned all the characters he had summoned this time into the Time Pagoda. Of course, after summoning these characters into the Time Pagoda, he also summoned the Spear Emperor and the Sword Emperor. After all, the strength of these two was already enough to protect him and the entire Great Xia Empire. Moreover, the ones he wanted the world to see were the Spear Emperor and the Sword Emperor. Of course, besides the Spear Emperor and the Sword Emperor, Chu Fan also summoned the Great Emperor Luangu. After all, Great Emperor Luangu's strength had reached the level of the third-generation Great Emperor, making him a top expert in the entire universe. After all, Xianyuan Wu Dao of the Xianyuan family had only reached this level. Furthermore, The strength of the Spear Emperor and the Sword Emperor was comparable to the 5th-generation Great Emperor and the 6th-generation Great Emperor. Having these two present could ensure the safety of the Great Xia Empire. After summoning these 3 top experts, Chu Fan also summoned back all the generals of the Great Xia Empire. Moreover, the Void Realm Great Emperor and the Sun Human Emperor were naturally summoned back by him at this time. After all, for his upcoming breakthrough to the Human Emperor realm, there would definitely be many who wished to interrupt his breakthrough. Therefore, Chu Fan naturally summoned back these Human Emperor realm experts and Great Emperor realm experts. In addition to this, those experts who had achieved alternative path to enlightenment were also all summoned by him. After all, the number of alternative path attainment experts he summoned this time was considerable. Of course, the Heavenly Emperor's son, who was only at the Quasi-Emperor realm, was thrown into the Time Pagoda by him. Although the Heavenly Emperor's son's strength had reached the Quasi-Emperor realm, he was not of much use to Chu Fan. After all, this time he was facing Heavenly God Academy and the Supremes in the restricted zones. After Chu Fan summoned all these top figures to the current Chang'an city of the Great Xia Empire, though Chang'an city was not yet truly completed, as these top experts all appeared above Chang'an city. Naturally, they released their chi without any hesitation. For example, the Void Realm Great Emperor stood directly above the Void Realm at this moment. His eyes calmly looked towards the direction of a restricted zone. Meanwhile, the Sun Human Emperor beside him also looked sharply towards the direction of a restricted zone. Of course, the alternative path attainment experts of the Great Xia Empire also all appeared in the sky at this time. Their eyes were full of vigilance as they surveyed the surrounding environment. Everything that happened above the Great Xia Empire naturally could not be hidden from the top forces in the central region. Naturally, Heavenly God Academy was the first to notice this. Void Absolute, who was in the Angel Academy, had not yet returned to seclusion at this time. However, at this moment, he slowly raised his head and looked towards the direction of the Void Realm Great Emperor in the sky. Then, he was seen frowning slightly. It seems the possessor of the Human Emperor fate intends to break through to the Human Emperor realm. But do you think these few Great Emperor-level figures of the Great Xia Empire can protect you? Void Absolute's face carried a hint of confusion at this moment, because he felt that the possessor of the Human Emperor fate was too impulsive. Perhaps it could be said that the possessor of the Human Emperor fate was overly confident in his own strength. Chapter 647: The Decision of the Heavenly God Academy and the Support of the Xinyuan Family. This top expert from the Heavenly God Academy did not believe Chu Fan would be so foolish. After all, if Chu Fan were truly that foolish, how could the Great Xia Empire have grown to this extent? After all, the current strength of the Great Xia Empire was not as simple as imagined. Although he currently felt that there were no top experts within the Great Xia Empire, the Great Emperor-level figures within the Great Xia Empire were not weak either. Old Ancestor, should we go and interrupt this possessor of the Human Emperor fate's breakthrough to the Human Emperor realm? An alternative path attainment expert, beside this top expert of the Heavenly God Academy, carefully looked at the top expert and spoke. At the same time, a hint of anger was present in his eyes. Of course, he mostly wanted revenge. After all, a Great Emperor-level existence had perished within their Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, for these alternative path attainment experts, they naturally wanted to avenge this Great Emperor-level expert. Even if our Heavenly God Academy takes action now, we cannot stop his breakthrough. After all, he has 2 Great Emperor Perfection Realm existences and 1 middle stage Human Emperor existence by his side. A late-stage Great Emperor expert from the Heavenly God Academy also spoke with a hint of helplessness at this moment. Although they could now act to prevent this possessor of the Human Emperor fate of the Great Xia Empire from breaking through to a higher realm. However, they were currently unable to stop this Human Emperor realm breakthrough. After all, the war a while ago showed that if the top experts within their Heavenly God Academy did not act, they absolutely could not stop the Great Xia Empire. If we cannot stop this possessor of the Human Emperor fate from breaking through to the Human Emperor realm, then the Great Xia Empire will gain another Human Emperor realm expert. At this moment, another Great Emperor realm expert slowly stepped forward and spoke. After speaking, his eyes still held a look of worry. Clearly, he also did not want the Great Xia Empire to gain another Human Emperor realm expert. However, he also knew that it was not as simple as imagined for the top experts within their Heavenly God Academy to completely deal with the experts of the Great Xia Empire. What's more, the Great Xia Empire also had the Xinyuan family as an ally. The Xinyuan family must certainly be planning to act now. Thinking of this, they also frowned. Don't worry, we are not the only ones in the Heavenly God Academy who don't want to see a Human Emperor realm expert appear in the Great Xia Empire. It might not be as simple as imagined for this possessor of the Human Emperor fate of the Great Xia Empire to survive this calamity. Void Absolute of the Heavenly God Academy nodded seriously at this moment. He did not believe that the supreme beings from the Forbidden Zone would allow another human Emperor Realm expert to appear in the Great Xia Empire. After all, the growth of a human Emperor Realm expert was different from the growth of these great Emperor Realm experts. Moreover, and more importantly, every human emperor bore the responsibility of suppressing the turmoil in the Forbidden Zone. Therefore, the supreme beings from the Forbidden Zone naturally could not stand by and watch Chu Fan truly grow to the human emperor realm. After hearing the words of this top expert from the Heavenly God Academy, the other experts of the Heavenly God Academy also looked towards the Great Xia Empire. At the same time, their eyes held a look of anticipation. They were all expectantly waiting for the supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone to make a move. Just as the Heavenly God Academy was waiting for the supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone to act, the Xianyuan family naturally also noticed the changes occurring in the Great Xia Empire. Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family gazed leisurely towards the sky above the Great Xia Empire. Or rather, at this moment, he was gazing leisurely in the direction of the Void Realm Great Emperor and the Sun Human Emperor. Is he planning to break through to the Human Emperor realm? But even if you want to break through to the Human Emperor realm, you shouldn't be so decisive, should you? After all, there's still so many enemies lurking in the dark. Then, Xianyuan Wudao was seen muttering to himself while looking in the direction of Chang'an City. He did not believe Chu Fan was someone who desired to break through the realm so hastily. If Chu Fan truly wanted to break through the realm like this, then his breakthrough would not have stopped a while ago. Therefore, Xianyuan Wudao now felt that the Great Xia Empire still possessed its own hidden heritage. Thinking of this, he also looked towards the Great Xia Empire with a hint of curiosity in his eyes. However, he also intended to act at this moment. After all, regardless of whether the Great Xia Empire possessed its own heritage or not, their Xianyuan family had to help Chu Fan overcome this lightning tribulation. And just as confusion and anticipation filled Xianyuan Wudao's eyes, several alternative path attainment experts from the Xianyuan family appeared beside him. Although the quasi-emperor level experts of the Xianyuan family also sensed the qi between heaven and earth. However, these quasi-emperor level experts of the Xianyuan family could not withstand true top experts, because these quasi-emperors of the Xianyuan family all knew that the experts the Great Xia Empire had to face this time were at least supreme or alternative path to enlightenment existences. Therefore, they naturally did not plan to act. After these alternative path to enlightenment existences appeared beside Xianyuan Wudao, they cupped their hands towards him. Subsequently, Xianyuan Wudao directly led the alternative path attainment experts of the Xianyuan family towards Chang'an City. After all, they intended to help the Great Xia Empire this time. Thus, it was naturally impossible for them to keep staying in the Xianyuan family. And as Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family led the alternative path attainment experts of the Xianyuan family toward the Great Xia Empire, the top experts in the other holy lands naturally also noticed the changes above the Great Xia Empire. Consequently, many experts in the Holy Lands looked towards Chang'an City in the Great Xia Empire with confusion in their eyes. Of course, the Chang'an City referred to here was the Chang'an City of the Central Domain. Their eyes were filled with confusion and incomprehension. What is the Great Xia Empire trying to do? Haven't they already unified the entire Central Domain? A top expert was seen muttering to himself, looking in the direction of the Great Xia Empire with curiosity and confusion in his eyes. But at this moment, he also had a guess in his heart. However, he simply did not believe the guess in his heart. Could it be that the figure in the Great Xia Empire intends to break through to the Great Emperor realm? At this moment, another quasi-emperor level expert from a holy land continued to mutter, and upon saying this, his eyes showed a look of shock. He should be planning to break through to the legendary human emperor realm. At this moment, the quasi-emperor level expert beside him supplemented the statement to the other quasi-emperor. After speaking, his eyes held a complex mix of feelings and anticipation. The complexities stemmed from the fact that the Great Xia Empire's leader was about to break through to the human emperor realm. And the anticipation was whether Chu Fan, who wished to break through to the human emperor realm, would go and battle the supreme beings from the Forbidden Zone after achieving the human emperor realm. Chapter 648, The Shocking Central Region. Discussion among the supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone. The other quasi-emperors were even more shocked after hearing the words of this quasi-emperor. If this were truly the case, then perhaps they would be able to witness the scene of Xianyuan human emperor breaking through to the human emperor realm millions of years ago. After all, it has been millions of years since a human emperor realm expert appeared. Thus, the quasi-emperors within these holy lands were naturally very curious about human emperor realm experts. Although Sun human emperor's strength is also within the human emperor realm. However, They had never witnessed Sun Human Emperor's breakthrough. Therefore, they were naturally very curious about the breakthrough to the Human Emperor realm. At this moment, the guesses in the hearts of the top experts from the other Holy Lands were similar to the guesses of the top experts from this Holy Land. After all, they all knew that the Great Xia Empire had a possessor of the Human Emperor fate. Therefore, it was quite normal for this possessor of the Human Emperor fate from the Great Xia Empire to be making a breakthrough now. Naturally, the entire Central Domain had also discovered this point. Those loose cultivators also looked towards Chang'an City. Their eyes held expressions of confusion and anticipation. At the same time, many loose cultivators also had excited expressions in their eyes. What exactly is going on? Why have all these top experts from the Great Xia Empire appeared above Chang'an City? Is a top expert going to attack Chang'an City? A loose cultivator who had reached the Saint King realm looked towards Chang'an City with confusion in his eyes and asked. He was very confused at this moment. After all, currently, Chang'an City was the most prominent existence in the entire Central Domain, and the Great Xia Empire was one of the Central Domain's top powers. Moreover, it was a top power that could crush all the Holy Lands. Therefore, this Saint King did not believe that the Great Xia Empire would have enemies coming to attack them. This situation suggests that the Emperor of the Great Xia Empire is about to make a breakthrough, right? After all, his strength has been infinitely close to the Great Emperor realm recently. If that is truly the case, then this time the Emperor of the Great Xia Empire must be breaking through to the legendary Human Emperor realm. Perhaps only this would cause all these top experts of the Great Xia Empire to appear. If this is true, then this time the Emperor of the Great Xia Empire will likely truly break through to the legendary Human Emperor realm. I didn't expect that after millions of years since Xianyuan Human Emperor, someone is finally going to break through to the Human Emperor realm again. I wonder what the difference is between the Human Emperor realm's heavenly tribulation and the Great Emperor realm's heavenly tribulation. No matter the difference, neither is something you or I can withstand. The cultivators across the entire Central Domain curiously looked towards Chang'an City. Of course, many cultivators had already guessed what was about to happen inside Chang'an City. They had all guessed that the Emperor of the Great Xia Empire inside Chang'an City was likely going to break through to the legendary Human Emperor realm. This was why Chang'an City had become so terrifying, and why the top experts of the Great Xia Empire had appeared. At the same time, these cultivators were also very curious about the difference between the Great Emperor realm's lightning tribulation and the Human Emperor realm's heavenly tribulation. While the cultivators of the Central Domain were curious about the Great Xia Empire's Emperor's breakthrough, the supreme beings from the Forbidden Zone were once again startled awake by the Great Emperor realm chi emanating from the Void Great Emperor and others of the Great Xia Empire. Thus, the Forbidden Zones all turned their gaze towards the Great Xia Empire. When they saw the Void Great Emperor and Sun Human Emperor of the Great Xia Empire standing in the Void Realm, they instantly guessed something. What's more, these supreme beings from the Forbidden Zone also sensed the terrifying Human Emperor Law Chi within Chang'an City. The ability to possess such terrifying Human Emperor Law showed just how powerful the Emperor of the Great Xia Empire was. Of course, besides this, they could also sense that this Human Emperor Law was about to make a breakthrough to the Human Emperor realm. In other words, Chu Fan was about to make a breakthrough to the Human Emperor realm. Thinking of this, they immediately fixed their gaze upon Chu Fan. At the same time, a look of desire appeared in their eyes. I didn't expect that the possessor of the Human Emperor fate of this era is about to break through to the Human Emperor realm. I have never absorbed the life force of the Human Emperor realm before. I wonder what the taste of a Human Emperor realm life chi is like. A supreme being level expert spoke, looking into the distance with desire in his eyes. At this moment, his eyes held a fervent look. He wished he could emerge from seclusion immediately. However, he quickly suppressed the impulse in his heart. After all, if he emerged alone now, it would naturally be impossible to defeat the top Great Emperor level experts of the Great Xia Empire. Furthermore, the Great Xia Empire also had so many alternative paths to enlightenment experts. It seems the Great Xia Empire has brought out all its hidden strength this time. The number of alternative paths to enlightenment cultivators has increased so much, but trying to resist us might be difficult. Another supreme being slowly looked towards Chang'an City, licking his lips as he spoke. He looked utterly depraved. Of course, one could see a fervent desire in his gaze. Clearly, they greatly desired the vital blood of Chu Fan, the possessor of the Human Emperor fate. Although the Great Xia Empire's current strength isn't particularly mighty, the Xianyuan family should still assist this possessor of the Human Emperor fate this time, and Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family has reached the level of a third-generation Great Emperor. At this moment, another supreme being from the Forbidden Zone slowly spoke, a look of solemnity appearing in his eyes as he finished. Perhaps they didn't need to worry about the Void Great Emperor and his son Human Emperor, but they were naturally worried about Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family. After all, this person's strength had already reached the level of a third-generation Great Emperor. Although the strength of these supreme beings from the Forbidden Zone was not weak, some supreme beings from the Forbidden Zone had even forged their own Dao. In other words, the strength of many supreme beings from the Forbidden Zone was currently at the supreme being level. However, there were a few individual supreme beings who had already reached the peak of the supreme. Perhaps it could be said that their current strength was no weaker than those top Great Emperor level experts. But they were naturally solemn when it came to the third-generation Great Emperor. No matter what, we cannot allow the possessor of the Human Emperor fate of this era to break through to the Human Emperor realm. Otherwise, the path to immortality in 100 years will become somewhat troublesome. Just then, an overbearing voice slowly reached the ears of the other supreme being level experts. This person had not a trace of death chi on his body. Instead, he possessed a terrifying, overbearing intent. At the same time, his body shone like a sun, illuminating the entire Forbidden Zone. The chi emanating from him had long surpassed that of an ordinary supreme being, or even an ordinary Great Emperor. Chapter 649, the Supreme Being of the Forbidden Zone, is moved, in the strange movements of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. The chi on this person had reached an extremely terrifying level. Even if Xianyuan Wudao were to come here, he would find that this person's chi was not at all weaker than his. This meant that the strength of this supreme being level expert in the Forbidden Zone was already not weaker than that of the third-generation Great Emperor. One must know that the third-generation Great Emperor had far surpassed ordinary Great Emperor level experts. Yet, even so, the strength of this supreme being in the Forbidden Zone had reached such a level. From this, it could be seen that the supreme being in the Forbidden Zone was not as simple as imagined. And as this supreme being from the Forbidden Zone appeared, a black light mass instantly appeared before everyone. The next second, a strange creature emerged from this black light mass. Moreover, this strange creature was slowly assembling itself. Soon, a black phoenix appeared before everyone. What was more important was that the chi emanating from this black phoenix was extremely terrifying. Of course, the most important thing was that this black phoenix slowly transformed into a middle-aged man who looked very eerie. The middle-aged man's face was adorned with strange patterns. The next second, he revealed his wicked grin. Since you want to deal with the possessor of the Human Emperor fate of this era, how could I be absent from such an event? Then his hoarse and somewhat morbid voice slowly drifted out. After his voice fell, his eyes were filled with a playful killing intent as he looked into the distance. Evidently, at this moment, he harbored a very terrifying killing intent towards the possessor of the Human Emperor fate of this era. Then, the middle-aged man, dressed in black robes and with black patterns on his face, licked his lips. Only then did he turn his gaze to the other supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone beside him. If we were to make a move, then this venerable one naturally cannot stand idly by. And just as the top expert's words fell, a fiery red figure appeared beside him. Then, a middle-aged man with a terrifying aura once again appeared beside them. The middle-aged man carried terrifying flames with him, making him entirely enveloped by these terrifying flames. What was even more incredible was that these flames were mixed with green light. Thus, it looked even more bizarre. However, even so, it could be seen that the strength of this middle-aged man was not as simple as imagined. As this middle-aged man appeared, many supreme being level experts from the Forbidden Zone also slowly emerged. Of course, these supreme being level experts were not as powerful as the three leading middle-aged men. After all, the strength of these three middle-aged men at the forefront was considered among the most top-tier existences among the supreme beings. What was more important was that they all came from different Forbidden Zones. Without the path to immortality, our supreme beings in the Forbidden Zone don't need to pay such a high price. The middle-aged man who had just appeared frowned and said at this moment. After speaking, his eyes were filled with worry as he looked into the distance. Of course, what he was worried about at this time was not failing to conquer the Great Xia Empire. He was worried that with so many supreme beings appearing, they would not be able to get more benefits. The Great Xia Empire has quite a few Great Emperor-level experts, and more importantly, this time it also includes the third-generation Great Emperor of the Xianyuan family, so there will be enough blood food for us to distribute this time. The middle-aged man with black patterns on his face grinned and slowly said at this moment. At the same time, his eyes showed a hint of excitement. Clearly, this incident was already an indispensable matter. Indeed, and if we truly make a move to interrupt this possessor of the Human Emperor fate from the Great Xia Empire's breakthrough, then it is likely that the alternative path to enlightenment existences from the Heaven-Mending Pavilion will also appear. At that time, our blood food will reach an even more terrifying level. It will naturally be simpler to recover. The middle-aged man with flames on him, who had spoken earlier, also looked into the distance with a hint of greed in his eyes and said, after speaking, his entire person's eyes were filled with a kaleidoscopic radiance. At the same time, it could be felt that the greed in the eyes of this middle-aged man with flames on him had not diminished in the slightest. The other Supreme Being level experts also nodded at each other after hearing his words. Then, everyone instantly turned their gaze towards the direction of the Great Xia Empire. At the same time, these Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone, led by these three top experts, flew directly towards the Great Xia Empire. The moment they appeared, they did not hide their qi in the slightest. This meant that the moment they appeared, many cultivators felt their qi. For example, Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family and other alternative path to enlightenment existences of the Xianyuan family. Moreover, the top-tier existences in the Heaven Mending Pavilion all sensed these qi. The Heaven Mending Pavilion had initially been constantly speculating about the Great Xia Empire's plans. But they hadn't expected to find that these supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone had appeared directly. Thinking of this, an alternative path attainment expert from the Heaven Mending Pavilion looked into the distance with a complex expression in his eyes. It seems this time, we, the Heaven Mending Pavilion, have no choice but to act. Then, this alternative path attainment expert from the Heaven Mending Pavilion sighed softly and said, initially, he had planned to let the other top experts in their Heaven Mending Pavilion just watch the show. But he hadn't expected that the Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone would actually make a move this time. Since the Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone had already made a move, it was naturally impossible for them, the Heaven Mending Pavilion, to stand by and do nothing. Thinking of this, the alternative path attainment expert from the Heaven Mending Pavilion also had a determined look in his eyes. If that's the case, then our Heaven Mending Pavilion will go all out, unite with the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire, and kill all these Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone. Another fiery alternative path attainment expert from the Heaven Mending Pavilion, with a face full of killing intent, looked towards the direction where these Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone had appeared and said, for them, being able to kill the Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone was the best outcome. And now that such a good thing had arrived, they naturally wouldn't stand by and do nothing. What's more, the strength of the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire was so terrifying now, that it would be even easier for them to kill the Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. And the other alternative path attainment experts, after hearing the words of this alternative path attainment expert, instantly had a gleam in their eyes. At the same time, the light in their eyes also became full of anticipation. Chapter 650, The Decision of the Heaven Mending Pavilion, joining forces to fight against the Dark Supreme. Following that, several alternative path attainment experts from the Heaven Mending Pavilion ascended towards the sky without the slightest hesitation. At the same time, carrying terrifying qi, they headed directly toward the direction of the Great Xia Empire. This time, the qi emanating from these alternative path attainment experts of the Heaven Mending Pavilion was not concealed at all. In other words, the moment these alternative path attainment experts from the Heaven Mending Pavilion appeared, many top experts immediately sensed their qi. Even now, many top experts have turned their gaze toward the Heaven Mending Pavilion. However, at this moment, many top experts naturally already guessed the intentions of these experts from the Heaven Mending Pavilion. Meanwhile, the peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert of the Heaven Mending Pavilion watched the departing alternative path attainment experts from his faction with a look of worry in his eyes. At the same time, he tightly clutched the Heaven Mending Pavilion's ultimate treasure, the Heaven Mending Stone. Should any accident befall these alternative path attainment experts of the Heaven Mending Pavilion, he would absolutely activate the Heaven Mending Stone in his hand immediately. He would then directly summon back the Great Emperor-level experts of the Heaven Mending Pavilion. However, doing so would prematurely trigger the Dark Turmoil. But now, the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone has already appeared. At this point, there's not much difference from triggering the Dark Turmoil. Therefore, a look of seriousness and solemnity appeared on his face. Just as the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone and the alternative path attainment experts from the Heaven Mending Pavilion appeared, the Heavenly God Academy naturally sensed the changes in the sky. When the Great Emperor-level experts of the Heavenly God Academy sensed the movement of the Supreme Being-level experts in the Dark Forbidden Zone, smiles appeared on their faces. At the same time, they could sense that the strength of the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone this time was not as simple as they had imagined. Thus, the smiles on their faces became increasingly blatant. However, upon sensing the appearance of the alternative path attainment experts from the Heaven Mending Pavilion, the expressions on their faces grew colder. After all, if the alternative path attainment experts from the Heaven Mending Pavilion had appeared, it meant the Heaven Mending Pavilion's experts intended to participate in this great battle. They certainly did not believe the Heaven Mending Pavilion would help the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone. Therefore, the great emperors of the Heavenly God Academy instantly came to hate the Heaven Mending Pavilion as well. Appear fiercely, but in the end, you can only accompany the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family in becoming the blood sacrifice for the Dark Supreme Being. Following that, a top expert from the Heavenly God Academy at the Great Emperor middle stage looked into the distance with a hint of amusement in his eyes and spoke. As a Great Emperor-level expert, he could naturally sense that the strength of the Supreme Being level experts in the Dark Forbidden Zone was extremely terrifying. Moreover, these Supreme from the Dark Forbidden Zone would absolutely not make a move unless they had true certainty of success. Therefore, the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone definitely had their own assurance now. Therefore, even if the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family could not be completely destroyed this time, they would absolutely be completely reduced to a first-rate power because of this battle. Furthermore, the Heavenly God Academy would be able to reap the benefits of the conflict later on. Thinking of this, the other Great Emperor-level experts of the Heavenly God Academy looked towards the sky above the Great Xia Empire, their eyes filled with excitement. At this moment, the chi emanating from the Dark Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone in the sky instantly permeated the entire universe. Even the four domains, East, West, South, and North, felt this terrifying pressure. Of course, the situation in the Eastern domain was slightly better. Although this pressure was extremely terrifying, the Eastern domain possessed the existence of Hongyu Great Emperor, a top expert at the Great Emperor level. Therefore, he naturally suppressed this pressure immediately. Nevertheless, the top experts of the Eastern domain instantly opened their eyes and looked into the distance, especially Heavenly Secret Master in Chang'an City, who looked towards the Central domain with a hint of worry and panic in his eyes. As the current Heavenly Secret Master of the Tianji Pavilion, he could naturally sense the chi of the Dark Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone. Thus, there was a look of concern in his eyes. It seems these Dark Supreme Being intend to strike at the Emperor Lord while he is undergoing tribulation. I hope the Emperor Lord can safely pass this great Emperor tribulation. Following that, Heavenly Secret Master quietly prayed for Chu Fan in his heart. At the same time, he looked toward the sky above the Central domain with a hint of worry. Because he knew how the outcome of this great battle would be determined. It mainly depended on the battle between the Dark Supreme Being and the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. Although Chu Long and the others beside him did not know exactly what had happened, a look of unease appeared in their hearts at this moment. Especially Chu Chun, who was beside Chu Long. As a former top prodigy of a holy land, he naturally guessed what kind of terrifying chi in the sky belonged to. However, at this moment, a hint of worry was in his eyes as he looked toward the Central domain. Of course, no matter how worried he was now, he could not change the reality of the situation. After all, it was naturally impossible for his strength to resist these Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone. Therefore, he could only helplessly wait for the final outcome of the great battle. Meanwhile, on the other side, in Chang'an City in the Central domain, Chu Fan was already seated cross-legged in the sky above the city. At the same time, Golden Human Emperor Law continuously emanated from his body. This Golden Human Emperor Law was constantly spreading outwards around him. More importantly, the chi around Chu Fan was growing increasingly terrifying. At this moment, it seemed as if he no longer paid attention to anything around him. He had even ceased to pay attention to this world. Only the terrifying chi on his body continued to rise steadily. Just as the chi on Chu Fan's body was continuously rising, Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family led the alternative path attainment experts of the Xianyuan family to appear here. At this moment, he glanced at Chu Fan with a look of scrutiny in his eyes. Following that, he looked solemnly toward the direction from which the terrifying chi was coming from the horizon. After all, he could also sense the level of strength reached by the Supreme Being level experts who had appeared from the Forbidden Zone this time. However, the moment he saw the direction from which the terrifying chi was coming from the horizon, Xianyuan Wudao took another deep look at Chu Fan in front of him. He did not believe Chu Fan would be undergoing tribulation so easily. Just as Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family led the alternative path attainment experts of the Xianyuan family to the sky above Chang'an City in the Central domain, several figures carrying powerful chi appeared behind Xianyuan Wudao and the others. Following that, they instantly cast their gaze upon Chu Fan. With a benevolent look in their eyes, they nodded towards Xianyuan Wudao and the Void Realm experts. Chapter 651 The Holy Land Avoids War. Xianyuan Wudao exposes his human king physique, attracting the Dark Supreme. At the same time, the top experts of the quasi-emperor level within those holy lands naturally sense the fluctuations happening in the sky. However, many of these quasi-emperor level experts from the holy lands chose not to participate in this great battle. After all, their strength was only at the quasi-emperor realm. Therefore, even if they participated in this great battle now, it wouldn't make much difference. Thus, they could only choose to remain in the Holy Land. If the dark turmoil truly erupted, they would definitely revive their Holy Land's foundation, the ultimate emperor weapon, just as everyone's gaze was directed towards Chang'an City. At this moment, the dark supreme beings from the Forbidden Zones finally appeared in the sky above Chang'an City. The three top experts standing in front of these dark supreme beings looked towards Xianyuan Wudao with a trace of excitement in their eyes. As the third-generation Great Emperor, the power within Xianyuan Wudao's body naturally far surpassed the power within the bodies of other Great Emperor-level experts. Therefore, these three Dark Supreme beings instantly fixed their gaze upon Xianyuan Wudao. At the same time, a hint of longing appeared at the corners of their mouths as they looked at Xianyuan Wudao. Meanwhile, the other Dark Supreme beings directed their attention toward the Void Great Emperor and the others. To think you can achieve a breakthrough to the human emperor realm right under our noses. Are you looking down on our dark forbidden zone too much? Following this, the Dark Supreme being whose body was wreathed in flames looked at Chu Fan with a hint of amusement and spoke. Of course, after he finished speaking, an even more terrifying chi erupted from his body. However, Chu Fan made no move after hearing his words. This sight made the Dark Supreme being wreathed in flames even more furious. The terrifying chi on his body was immediately released in anger. At the same time, his palm slammed directly towards Chu Fan. The terrifying power instantly caused the entire sky to be permeated by this terrifying chi. Seeing this scene, Xianyuan Wudao naturally did not intend to stand by and watch. Furthermore, the entire Xianyuan family had pinned all their hopes on Chu Fan. Therefore, they naturally could not remain indifferent at this time. Thus, Xianyuan Wudao was seen rapidly striking out with the palm. The terrifying power instantly blocked the attack of the Dark Supreme being wreathed in flames. Simultaneously, a terrifying chi emerged from Xianyuan Wudao. Then, he carried that terrifying power and flew directly toward the sky. Of course, as he flew toward the sky, his palm also reached out toward the three top experts in front of him. He wanted to rely on his own strength to draw away these three top expert Dark Supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. Only by doing this would their side have a chance of victory in the ensuing battle. But how could these three Dark Supreme beings possibly let him have his way? The Dark Supreme being wreathed in flames was seen rapidly striking a palm, forcing back Xianyuan Wudao's power. Then, he immediately followed in the direction Xianyuan Wudao had gone. As for the other two top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone, they had no intention of fighting Xianyuan Wudao. After all, what they truly wanted now was to deal with Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate. Seeing this, Xianyuan Wudao held nothing back, directly unleashing the chi of his human king physique. Clearly, he planned to reveal his trump card to attract all three top experts and supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. And as the terrifying human emperor law erupted from his body, another top expert supreme being from the Dark Forbidden Zone was finally drawn in by him. Thus, the Dark Supreme being whose body was covered in strange black markings immediately chased after Xianyuan Wudao. In the next second, the two immediately joined forces to confront Xianyuan Wudao. Despite this, there was still one top expert remaining from the Dark Forbidden Zone in this universe. Clearly, this top expert intended to attack Chu Fan directly. Xianyuan Wudao felt somewhat helpless seeing this scene. However, no matter how helpless he felt, he could only face the two top expert supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone currently before him. After all, the strength of these two top expert supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him was extremely formidable. Therefore, he naturally could not underestimate these two top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone before him. You want to rely on your own strength to hold our attention, but your power is still insufficient. The Dark Supreme being with black markings on his face licked his lips and spoke to Xianyuan Wudao, a look of contemptuous amusement on his face after he finished. After hearing his words, Xianyuan Wudao calmly looked at the two supreme being level experts before him. Meanwhile, the remaining top expert Dark Supreme being below immediately slammed a palm towards Chu Fan. The terrifying power seemed capable of utterly destroying this world. The terrifying human emperor law above Chu Fan was instantly dispersed by this powerful force. Just as that palm was about to land on Chu Fan, the Void Great Emperor and the Sun Human Emperor finally made their move. The two joined forces to launch two terrifying attacks, directly blocking the incoming strike. Even so, the chi emanating from their bodies became extremely suppressed. Moreover, the two of them released all the chi from their bodies at this moment. They planned to use their chi to withstand the attack unleashed by this Dark Supreme Being. However, the strength of the third-generation Great Emperor's Dark Supreme Being had naturally reached a terrifying level. Therefore, even their combined efforts did not immediately shatter the Dark Supreme Being's offensive. Of course, the combined efforts of the Void Great Emperor and the Sun Human Emperor managed to resist this attack. The moment the Void Great Emperor and the Sun Human Emperor jointly withstood this attack, the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone wore a look of surprise on his face. But soon, the surprise on his face turned into amusement. In the next second, he launched an even more terrifying attack. As this attack shot out from his hand, the entire firmament seemed to grow dim. Black light instantly appeared throughout the sky, enveloping the entire expanse. The other Dark Supreme Beings saw this scene and looked at the Void Great Emperor and the Sun Human Emperor with amusement. After all, if the Sun Human Emperor and the Void Great Emperor wanted to withstand this attack, they would have to fight desperately. They wanted to see whether the Sun Human Emperor and the Void Great Emperor would choose to risk everything. However, the behavior of the Void Great Emperor and the Sun Human Emperor at this time left them somewhat disappointed, because the look in their eyes was still extremely calm. And just when everyone felt surprised, a terrifying and domineering voice came from below the Great Wall. "Impudence! You dare to run wild in my Great Xia Empire? Get lost, Supreme!" As the word "lost" left his mouth, a terrifying power swept across the entire firmament. The black chi in the sky instantly vanished. In his place stood a middle-aged man, radiating a domineering chi between heaven and earth. He looked at the Dark Supreme Being before him with a trace of anger in his eyes. At the same time, the pressure belonging to the third-generation Great Emperor directly radiated from his body. Chapter 652, The Chaotic Ancient Emperor makes his move. An earth-shattering battle unfolds. He was the third-generation Great Emperor Luangu, whom Chu Fan summoned this time. At this moment, his strength had reached a level similar to that of the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone. Moreover, what was more important was that in the past he grew stronger the more he fought, even though every major battle ended in defeat. However, after achieving the true Great Emperor realm, Great Emperor Luangu's strength did not disappoint, as his power was considered a top expert existence even among the Great Emperor realm. Therefore, the moment he appeared, he immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. In fact, everyone present focused their gazes upon Great Emperor Luangu. This was because they had not expected such a terrifying Great Emperor-level existence to be present within the Great Xia Empire. Even Xianyuan Wudao, who was currently engaging the Dark Supreme Being, showed a hint of surprise in his eyes. But soon, a smile appeared on his face. With such a terrifying existence in the Great Xia Empire, the outcome of this great battle would be difficult to predict. After all, they had been at a disadvantage initially. Now, as long as he restrained the two top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone, he could allow this top expert from the Great Xia Empire to fight the other top expert from the Dark Forbidden Zone. In that case, the result of this great battle would be obvious. Furthermore, more importantly, the Great Xia Empire still had several top expert Great Emperor-level experts on its side. Therefore, this great battle could already be considered an advantage for the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. And the facts were exactly as Xianyuan Wudao had anticipated. Void Great Emperor and the Sun Human Emperor from the Great Xia Empire immediately launched an attack against the Supreme Beings emerging from the Dark Forbidden Zone ahead of them. The top Supreme Beings had already been restrained. Thus, the ensuing battle between the ordinary Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone and the collective top experts from the Great Xia Empire, such as Void Great Emperor and Sun Human Emperor, would naturally not be simple. Moreover, what was more important was that Void Great Emperor immediately used a powerful technique. A terrifying void palm instantly appeared in the sky. He then directly transported the Supreme Beings in front of him into the depths of the Void Realm. The terrifying void law directly enveloped these Supreme Being-level experts. When these Supreme Beings felt the terrifying aura emanating from Void Great Emperor, expressions of anger and helplessness appeared on their faces. After all, these Supreme Beings had once been Great Emperor-level experts. Furthermore, they were considered top expert existences within the Great Emperor realm. Yet, they never expected to be so contemptuously transported here by Void Great Emperor. Sun Human Emperor's actions at this time were naturally also very overbearing. He quickly threw a punch toward the several Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him. The terrifying power of the sun directly swept away the Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. They instantly appeared in the depths of the Void Realm. This great battle thus commenced. Of course, the great accomplishment sacred body of the desolate ancient sacred body lineage, and great accomplishment hegemon body, also quickly took away several supreme beings who had emerged from the dark forbidden zone. Instantly, the number of supreme being level experts above Chang'an City began to decrease. At this time, the alternative path attainment expert of the Xianyuan family and the alternative path attainment expert of the Great Xia Empire also chose to directly take away all the supreme being level experts above Chang'an City. Therefore, the only top experts remaining above Chang'an City were Great Emperor Luangu and the top expert from the Forbidden Zone. At this moment, Great Emperor Luangu looked at the top expert from the Forbidden Zone before him with a hint of disdain in his eyes. Immediately after, a golden light instantly appeared beneath his feet. The next second, a golden war chariot instantly materialized beneath him. Great Emperor Luangu then directly sat upon the golden war chariot. He looked at the top expert from the Dark Forbidden Zone ahead with disdain in his eyes. Although the top expert from the Forbidden Zone saw Great Emperor Luangu treating him with such disregard, a flash of anger appeared in his eyes. Immediately after, he quickly headed toward the depths of the Void Realm. It was not because he was afraid of destroying this universe. The main reason was that fighting here meant the surrounding law imposed significant restrictions on him. Therefore, this supreme being from the Dark Forbidden Zone chose to fight Great Emperor Luangu in the depths of the Void Realm. Seeing this, Great Emperor Luangu drove his war chariot toward the top expert from the Dark Forbidden Zone. Following this, the great battle fully erupted in the depths of the Void Realm. Instantly, the entire depths of the Void Realm experienced intense fluctuations. Great Emperor Luangu's strength was inherently that of a top expert existence. It could even be said that Great Emperor Luangu's strength was in no way inferior to Xianyuan Wudao's. Therefore, facing a top supreme being from the Forbidden Zone, he naturally felt no fear. Great Emperor Luangu even displayed his own magnificence at this moment. Every one of his punches could annihilate a Great Emperor-level expert. It could even be said that the current Great Emperor Luangu already possessed the magnificence of Wuxia Great Emperor. A terrifying aura emanated from him as he continuously charged toward the Dark Supreme being before him. At this time, Xianyuan Wudao naturally saw the developments on that side of the battlefield. So, with excitement in his eyes, he held back the two top experts in front of him. Although he could not defeat the two top experts before him, he could still manage to restrain the two top experts in front of him. Therefore, Xianyuan Wudao calmly held back the two top experts before him. The other great battles were also continuously unfolding in the depths of the Void Realm. In particular, the battle involving Void Great Emperor was extremely dazzling. Although his strength was not as formidable as Great Emperor Luangu's or Xianyuan Wudao's, the power he displayed at this moment was also extremely terrifying. After all, Void Great Emperor's law was inherently the Void Law. Therefore, his strength naturally received a huge boost within the Void Realm. And while this earth-shattering battle in the sky was ongoing, Chu Fan was also continuously breaking through his cultivation. At this moment, he was only one step away from the true human emperor realm. However, he did not intend to take this step immediately. This was because he was still continuously absorbing luck to enhance his strength. He planned to raise his strength to the most top expert level before reaching the human emperor realm. It could even be said that even if he fought a late-stage Great Emperor expert now, he could defeat the late-stage Great Emperor expert. Therefore, as soon as Chu Fan breaks through to the human emperor realm, he'll be able to fight an expert at the Great Emperor perfection realm. Such strength was difficult for even Xianyuan human emperor to achieve in the past. This was because the former Xianyuan human emperor could fight a late-stage Great Emperor expert after breaking through to the early-stage human emperor realm. But it was still extremely difficult for him to defeat an expert at the Great Emperor Perfection Realm. Chapter 653 Chu Fan's Terrifying Combat Power, the choice of the top experts of the Heavenly God Academy. Moreover, the chi emanating from Chu Fan's body now had already far exceeded the range that ordinary people could comprehend. More importantly, the chi on Chu Fan's body was still continuously rising. Furthermore, the rising chi had not yet directly allowed his cultivation to break through to the human emperor realm. After all, wanting to break through to the human emperor realm or the great emperor realm required passing a true emperor tribulation, and then integrating the heaven's heart seal of this era. Of course, breakthrough to the human emperor realm did not require the fusion of the heaven's heart seal. Because true top experts did not need to fuse the heaven's heart seal, they all relied on their own law to break through the realm. Therefore, their strength was naturally superior to that of an ordinary great emperor-level expert who had fused the heaven's heart seal. Naturally, fusing the heaven's heart seal also had its own benefits. Because if they fused the heaven's heart seal, they would not be restricted by this universe within it. For example, The Supreme Being from the Forbidden Zone were initially existences who had fused the Heaven's Heart Seal. Therefore, at that time, they were naturally not restricted by the heavenly Tao of this universe. But now, they had completely abandoned the Heaven's Heart Seal. Therefore, they were naturally subject to restrictions within this universe. Especially on this land, their restrictions were even more terrifying. This was also why everyone chose to fight deep within the universe, because the restrictions on them would be weaker. Furthermore, top experts had no significant restrictions deep within the Void Realm. Just as Chu Fan was continuously improving his strength, the news that Guan Yu, Great Emperor Luangu, had emerged to resist the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone had naturally spread throughout the entire universe. At this moment, the eyes of this top expert of the Great Emperor level within the Heavenly God Academy were filled with anger and killing intent, because he had not expected that the Great Xia Empire actually possessed such a terrifying Great Emperor level expert. However, a look of relief appeared on his face at this moment, because if they had made a move initially, they would definitely have clashed with this top expert of the Great Xia Empire. But now, this top expert of the Great Xia Empire had acted due to the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone. This allowed the top expert within their Heavenly God Academy to see through the Great Xia Empire's final trump card. Therefore, a look of gratitude appeared on their faces. We didn't expect the Great Xia Empire to possess such a terrifying Great Emperor level expert. However, now that their trump cards have been revealed, shouldn't our Heavenly God Academy make a move now? The late-stage Great Emperor level expert within the Heavenly God Academy slowly looked towards their old ancestor and asked. As he spoke, his eyes held a hint of expectation. At the same time, the killing intent he felt towards Chu Fan was extremely intense, because he could sense that the chi emanating from Chu Fan's body was becoming increasingly powerful. If this were truly the case, then their best course of action now should be to kill Chu Fan, this possessor of the human emperor fate. Naturally, the other two Great Emperor-level experts also looked seriously towards their old ancestor after hearing his words, because their thoughts at this moment were the same as the thoughts of the Great Emperor who had just spoken. Now is not the best time for us to act, because the Heaven-Mending Pavilion is still watching in the shadows. Furthermore, haven't you noticed that the cultivator who achieved the alternative path to enlightenment from the Heaven-Mending Pavilion next to this possessor of the human emperor fate has not chosen to act? They're likely guarding this possessor of the human emperor fate right now. Void Absolute of the Heavenly God Academy shook his head at this moment, and then his gaze slowly drifted towards the sky above Chang'an City. Because the cultivator who achieved the alternative path to enlightenment from the Heaven-Mending Pavilion had not acted, instead choosing to guard the possessor of the human emperor fate. From this, it could be seen that the Heaven-Mending Pavilion hoped for this possessor of the human emperor fate to grow up. Therefore, if the Heavenly God Academy were to act, those top expert of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion would certainly make a move. Moreover, more importantly, these top expert of the Heavenly God Academy were wary of the Heaven-Mending Stone within the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. If the Heaven-Mending Stone were to summon those top expert of the Great Emperor level, it would be difficult for their Heavenly God Academy to truly deal with the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. After all, the moment the Heaven-Mending Stone was deployed, it would signify the Heaven-Mending Pavilion and the Heavenly God Academy truly launching their final great battle. This was also why no great battle had occurred between the Heaven-Mending Pavilion and the Heavenly God Academy. Furthermore, after the great emperors heard the words of this top expert, their gazes slowly drifted towards the individuals from the Heaven-Mending Pavilion who achieved the alternative path to enlightenment. At the same time, they were somewhat worried about the situation on the Heaven-Mending Pavilion side. Meanwhile, the Heaven-Mending Pavilion side calmly looked towards the sky above Chang'an City, because the Heaven-Mending Pavilion had guessed from the beginning that the Great Xia Empire had its own territory. I could also see that this peak quasi-emperor realm expert from the Heaven-Mending Pavilion was tightly clutching the Heaven-Mending Stone in his hand. Clearly, he had initially intended to summon the three top expert great emperors from the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. However, if he did that, the effect of the Heaven-Mending Stone would vanish for 1,000,000 years, meaning the Heaven-Mending Stone would require energy replenishment during this 1,000,000-year period. Fortunately, the Great Xia Empire had its own top expert. This also meant that the Heaven-Mending Stone on the Heaven-Mending Pavilion side was not used. Meanwhile, the eyes of the top expert of the quasi-emperor level from the other Holy Land were filled with shock, because they had not expected such a terrifying existence within the Great Xia Empire. At the same time, many Holy Land regretted why they hadn't helped the Great Xia Empire. If they had helped the Great Xia Empire, they would certainly have gained the Great Xia Empire's recognition. Of course, no matter how much they regretted it now, it was useless. At the same time, Some Holy Land were anticipating the top expert from the Forbidden Zone to make a move. After all, the number of top expert within the Forbidden Zone was not just limited to this. They still had truly top expert. For these top figures, they naturally knew this point. And the fact was exactly as the top expert within these Holy Land had guessed. At this moment, the supreme being from the Forbidden Zone naturally began to slowly awaken. Initially, they had not intended to awaken, because merely one possessor of the human Emperor Fate and those great Emperor-level beings were naturally insufficient to replenish the energy required for them to act. However, they had not expected that the Great Xia Empire actually possessed such a terrifying existence. Instantly, this caused everyone else's eyes to carry a hint of worry. And at this moment, an extremely terrifying qi began to revive within the Forbidden Zone. Chapter 654, a powerful figure emerges from the Dark Forbidden Zone. The Sword Emperor appears, suppressing the enemy with a single sword strike. This aura was terrifying enough to shock people. What was more important was that, simultaneously with the appearance of this aura belonging to a top expert from the Dark Forbidden Zone, many other top expert auras were constantly awakening in the other Dark Forbidden Zones. One could tell from these auras that the strength of their owners was definitely not weak. It could even be said that the strength of the owners of these auras had already reached a more terrifying level of existence. Furthermore, the owners of these auras were still continuously reviving, as these auras slowly began to become even more terrifying. Following this, a bizarre aura appeared above these Forbidden Zones. In the next second, 4 figures emitting terrifying auras appeared above the Forbidden Zones. The aura emanating from the owners of these presences reached an unprecedented degree. More importantly, an ominous aura was also radiating from them. It was as if they were contaminated by something inauspicious. One of them was emitting bizarre red hair from his body. This was the appearance of a late-stage Great Accomplishment Sacred Body, and the aura on his body far surpassed that of an ordinary Great Accomplishment Sacred Body. At this moment, his gaze leisurely looked toward the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body deep within the Void Realm. I didn't expect a Great Accomplishment Sacred Body to appear in this epic. I wonder if my strength will advance further after devouring his vital chi and blood. Following this, he looked at the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body with a hint of amusement in his eyes and spoke. Of course, at this moment, a trace of mockery appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he also looked proudly toward Great Emperor Luangu in the sky. For him, although the strength of Great Emperor Luangu was decent, it naturally wouldn't take him too long to deal with Great Emperor Luangu. At this moment, a middle-aged man beside him, who was also emitting a bizarre aura, looked longingly toward Xianyuan Wudao. He desperately desired to obtain Xianyuan Wudao's body at this moment, and use it to increase his own strength. Human King Physique. I hope this great medicine can solidify my strength. Following this, his voice, extremely deep, spread throughout the entire universe. As a result, the top experts across the entire universe instantly turned their attention to this location. Xianyuan Wudao even felt an incredibly terrifying aura locking onto him. This made a chill run down his spine, but even so, he continued to fight fiercely against the 2 top supremes from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him. And just as Xianyuan Wudao sensed this terrifying aura, Chu Fan also felt the terrifying suppression in the sky. Despite this, his face remained expressionless. Instead, he was continuously improving his own strength. The other 2 top supremes from the Dark Forbidden Zone, however, turned their gaze toward Chu Fan, the possessor of the human Emperor Fate. They were seen licking their lips maniacally while looking at Chu Fan. Clearly, at this moment, they also wanted to completely devour the human Emperor Law of the human Emperor Fate on Chu Fan's body. Doing so might allow their strength to increase. Following this, the auras on the 4 figures immediately erupted. Seeing this scene, those from the Heavenly God Academy naturally showed excitement on their faces. All of them looked expectantly at these top Dark Supreme beings in the sky. However, the alternative path attainment experts from the Heaven Mending Pavilion looked at these terrifying auras with worried expressions. At this moment, their faces were filled with resolute determination as they looked at these top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone. Following this, they quickly formed a formation, protecting Chu Fan, the possessor of the human Emperor Fate, within it. Evidently, even at this moment, they had no intention of abandoning their initial choice. The one within the Heaven Mending Pavilion was about to execute the Heaven Mending Art to summon the top Great Emperor-level experts sealed within their Heaven Mending Stone. But right at this moment, a terrifying sword chi appeared within the Great Xia Empire. This sword chi seemed to completely cleave the entire sky into 2 halves. More importantly, this sword chi shot directly toward the top Dark Supreme beings without the slightest hesitation. Void Absolute, from the Heavenly God Academy, initially had a smile on his face, but after sensing this terrifying sword chi, his smile instantly turned gloomy. At the same time, his face showed a look of disbelief. You few rats hiding in the dark actually dare to covet my great Xia Empire? You truly don't know your place. Just as this sword chi appeared, a domineering yet cold voice slowly drifted down from the sky. Following this, a handsome middle-aged man slowly appeared in the sky. He held a long sword in his arms. He looked as if he was born for the sword. This person was none other than the Sword Emperor summoned by Chu Fan. And more importantly, his strength had reached the level of a 5th-generation Great Emperor. The sword chi on his body instantly formed a long river of sword chi in front of him. Then, the man slowly stepped onto this long river of sword chi. He leisurely headed toward the top experts from the dark Forbidden Zone. The moment he appeared, the laws throughout the entire universe began to tremble violently. It was as if even the laws of the universe could not withstand the sword chi emanating from him. Following this, the handsome middle-aged man quickly swung his sword toward the top experts from the dark Forbidden Zone in front of him. The terrifying sword chi instantly enveloped these top experts from the dark Forbidden Zone. A massive spatial rift also appeared in front of them. In an instant, the top experts from the dark Forbidden Zone vanished into thin air. The handsome middle-aged man from the Great Xia Empire also glanced toward Chu Fan. After nodding behind Chu Fan, the man, holding his immortal sword, disappeared from the spot. Evidently, at this moment, he intended to go fight fiercely with those top experts from the dark Forbidden Zone. His terrifying aura instantly vanished from this part of the universe. This time, their great battle did not take place deep within the Void Realm. Instead, it was as if they had left this universe. Just like the great battle between Xianyuan Human Emperor and the top expert of the Heavenly God Academy in the past, it did not occur within this universe. They carried no aura. It was as if everything that had just happened had not occurred. However, even though there were no fluctuations in the sky at this moment, everyone present had clearly witnessed everything that had just transpired, especially Xianyuan Wudao, whose face was completely filled with shock, because he had not expected such a terrifying existence to reside within the Great Xia Empire. It even made him unable to harbor any thought of resistance. This instantly made Xianyuan Wudao realize the extent of this top Great Emperor-level expert strength. However, at this moment, an excited expression appeared on his face again. At the same time, his anticipation for the Great Xia Empire grew stronger. He had not expected the Great Xia Empire to give him surprise after surprise. Chapter 655: The Decision of Wu Ju of the Heavenly God Academy, and the Awakening of Tianju and Diju. No one had anticipated such a terrifying existence within the Great Xia Empire. Even the top experts from Heaven Mending Pavilion at this moment watched the battle, which was no longer in this universe, with disbelief in their eyes, because they also hadn't expected the Great Xia Empire to possess such a formidable existence. However, the expressions in the eyes of these top experts from Heaven Mending Pavilion suddenly became very strange. Finally, after a deep sigh, the other experts from Heaven Mending Pavilion slowly stood by Chu Fan's side, awaiting Chu Fan's breakthrough. After all, the current battle didn't require their participation, so their presence here, guarding Chu Fan, was sufficient. Meanwhile, the Great Emperor-level top expert from Heavenly God Academy, at this moment, had eyes filled with disbelief and anger, because Void Absolute also hadn't expected the Great Xia Empire to possess such a terrifying existence. He could sense that the Sword Emperor from the Great Xia Empire, who had just appeared, was in no way weaker than him. From this, one could infer the extent of the Great Xia Empire's top expert strength. Thinking of this, his eyes held both anger and lingering fear. If Heavenly God Academy had made a move from the very beginning, then this top expert would likely have been their Heavenly God Academy's opponent. As he considered this, a trace of lingering fear arose in his heart. However, at this moment, when he looked towards Chu Fan, who was undergoing tribulation in the sky, a hint of killing intent reappeared in his eyes. After all, the Great Xia Empire's top expert strength was so terrifying. Therefore, he now wished to eliminate this possessor of the human emperor fate from the Great Xia Empire in advance. Only in this way could their Heavenly God Academy's plan proceed. And the several Earth-grade, Great Emperor-level experts from Heavenly God Academy, beside him, all had expressions of disbelief in their eyes at this moment. Their eyes were all staring blankly at the sky. Although they couldn't see the exact location of those top experts in the Dark Forbidden Zone and the Sword Emperor at this moment, they had just sensed the extent of the Great Emperor-level top expert strength from the Great Xia Empire. Therefore, they had not yet recovered from the shock they had just experienced. It seems we ultimately underestimated the Great Xia Empire but now the Great Xia Empire's trump cards should all have been revealed, and we cannot allow this possessor of the human emperor fate from the Great Xia Empire to continue his breakthrough. If he continues to break through, it might truly affect our Heavenly God Academy's plans in the future. Void Absolute looked towards Chu Fan's direction with a distant gaze and said, after speaking, a thoughtful expression appeared in his eyes. Clearly, at this moment, he was also contemplating whether Heavenly God Academy should make a move. After all, the Great Xia Empire's top experts had already appeared. He didn't believe there were any top experts within the Great Xia Empire who had not yet appeared, because the strength of the firm appearance of the Great Xia Empire this time had far exceeded his imagination. Of course, while he was contemplating whether to make a move against Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate, he also had some worries in his heart at this moment. After all, he didn't know if Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate, or rather, the entire Great Xia Empire, had any other trump cards. If the Great Xia Empire still had other trump cards, then if their Heavenly God Academy made a move now, they would definitely face retaliation from the Great Xia Empire. Thinking of this, Void Absolute's eyes also held a hint of contemplation, because he himself didn't know whether they should make a move now. As he considered this, the expression in his eyes also became very complex. Old Ancestor, Junior believes we should directly attack the Great Xia Empire and suppress it with our most terrifying strength. And now, our Heavenly God Academy's top experts can also appear. The Great Emperor, late-stage expert from Heavenly God Academy, slowly stepped forward at this moment, looking at the Heavenly God Academy's top Great Emperor and spoke softly. After all, he knew that besides Void Absolute Old Ancestor, Heavenly God Academy also had Heavenly Absolute and Earth Absolute, and one must know that the strength of Heavenly Absolute and Earth Absolute far exceeded their imagination. So they naturally believed that these two top experts of their Heavenly God Academy could easily deal with the Great Xia Empire's top experts. And Void Absolute, after hearing the words of this Great Emperor from Heavenly God Academy, hesitated slightly. Although their two top experts from Heavenly God Academy could indeed make a move now, their two top experts from Heavenly God Academy had not yet fully recovered from their injuries. If they were to make a move, it would worsen their injuries. This would be very unfavorable for them when facing the path to immortality in the future. This was what he had been contemplating all along. However, soon he looked towards Chu Fan, whose aura was constantly increasing in the sky, and the contemplative look in his eyes became even more intense. Although their Heavenly God Academy's top experts could indeed choose not to make a move, if Chu Fan were to grow, then Xianyuan Great Emperor, whom they had driven out of this universe, might return. One must know that Xianyuan Human Emperor's strength far exceeded their imagination. Moreover, and more importantly, during these millions of years, Xianyuan Human Emperor's strength would certainly have greatly improved. And at that time, most importantly, after Xianyuan Human Emperor returns, he might summon all the other Great Emperor-level experts of the Xianyuan family back. In that case, it would be even more difficult for their Heavenly God Academy to deal with the Xianyuan family. After all, these Great Emperor-level experts of the Xianyuan family are currently searching for their old ancestor in some unknown universe. If Xianyuan Human Emperor returns, he would definitely be able to bring them all back. At that time, the number of top experts Heavenly God Academy would have to face would be incredibly vast. It would be even more difficult for them to truly defeat the combined forces of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. Thinking of this, the expression in the eyes of this Great Emperor-level top expert from Heavenly God Academy also became resolute. Then, he was seen crushing a jade pendant in his hand. As this jade pendant was crushed, a terrifying aura was felt emanating from the back mountain of Heavenly God Academy. And as this terrifying aura emerged, another equally terrifying aura followed closely behind. In the next second, the auras of two top experts instantly permeated the entire Heavenly God Academy. Then, two middle-aged men quickly arrived beside this top Great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy. More importantly, a terrifying aura emanated from these two middle-aged men, and a terrifying injury could also be seen on their chests. Chapter 656 The Three Masters of the Heavenly God Academy take action. The unconventional Tao achiever of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion is utterly defeated. Moreover, upon these wounds, one could see threads of golden law constantly circulating. These golden laws seemed intent on making the wounds even more severe. Surrounding these golden laws were numerous other laws continuously resisting them. These golden laws were precisely the laws left behind by the Xianyuan Human Emperor during his great battle with them. This was why, even after 1,000,000 years, their injuries had not completely healed. From the terrifying wounds on their chests, drops of fresh blood continued to flow. This blood seemed capable of utterly destroying all creation. It was extremely frightening. At this moment, Heavenly Absolute and Earth Absolute turned their gazes toward Void Absolute standing before them. They had been in secluded cultivation for 1,000,000 years. Naturally, they were unaware of the events occurring in the outside world. Therefore, the two of them naturally looked towards Void Absolute. Another possessor of the human Emperor Fate has appeared in our universe, and the power established by this possessor of the human Emperor Fate is extremely vast. Void Absolute then began explaining to Heavenly Absolute and Earth Absolute why he had summoned them. At the same time, he voiced all the thoughts in his heart. Of course, he also revealed the worries he held. After all, he was naturally very worried about Chu Fan and the Great Xia Empire now. After hearing Void Absolute's words, Heavenly Absolute and Earth Absolute looked up at the sky in disbelief. At this moment, they could also sense the terrifying aura of the continuous great battles taking place in the sky. For example, the battle between Xianyuan Wudao and the two top experts from the Forbidden Zone, and the battle between Great Emperor Luangu and the top expert from the Forbidden Zone's war. Currently, Great Emperor Luangu had gained the upper hand. However, for Heavenly Absolute and Earth Absolute, none of this mattered, because the one they wanted to deal with was Chu Fan, this possessor of the human Emperor Fate. Since the two of us have appeared, it is time for the world to witness the three absolutes of our Heavenly God Academy. Following this, Heavenly Absolute slowly stepped forward, looked at Void Absolute, and spoke. After he finished, a look of determination flashed in his eyes. His entire being appeared dazzling. Simultaneously, the terrifying aura surrounding him erupted immediately. Then, he slowly took a step forward. The terrifying aura on his body instantly burst forth. What was more important, however, was that the injuries on his body seemed to have been completely suppressed by him at this moment. Earth Absolute, standing beside him, nodded calmly after hearing Heavenly Absolute's words. At the same time, a trace of killing intent appeared on Earth Absolute's face. The terrifying aura emanating from his entire being also spread out immediately. The surrounding top experts of the Heavenly God Academy felt immense reverence upon sensing this terrifying aura. Their eyes were filled with fervent gazes as they looked at these two top experts. As the auras of these two top experts erupted, those other top experts naturally sensed their presence. Even Xianyuan Wudao instantly showed a hint of hatred in his eyes. Despite this, he could only continue his great battle against the two top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone before him. After all, although his current strength was not weaker than that of the two top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone, it was certainly not easy for him to defeat these top experts before him. At this moment, the Supreme Being from the Forbidden Zone who sensed their aura was also somewhat confused. However, the three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy transformed into three terrifying beams of light and headed toward the Great Xia Empire. The aura of the three absolutes completely erupted. At this moment, they did not even reserve any power to suppress their injuries. After all, if they wanted to slay this possessor of the human Emperor Fate, they had to do so with the fastest possible speed. The alternative path attainment experts of the Heaven Mending Pavilion wanted to resist these three terrifying auras. But the moment these three terrifying auras merely made contact with them, they were instantly transformed into streaks of light and were sent flying, completely defeated. Then every single one of them fell to the ground, spitting blood. Clearly, the aura released by the three absolutes was not something they could withstand. However, Chu Fan showed no trace of worry on his face. Instead, he was experiencing the terrifying power within his body. Furthermore, and more importantly, this terrifying power inside his body was still continuously growing. As time passed bit by bit, the three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy appeared directly before Chu Fan. At the same time, Heavenly Absolute, his eyes brimming with killing intent, directly threw a punch at Chu Fan. The terrifying power had far exceeded what an ordinary Great Emperor-level expert could endure. Even the entire firmament seemed to mourn because of it. It was as if this single punch could completely destroy the entire sky. At this moment, even the peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert in the Heaven Mending Pavilion had eyes filled with anger and unwillingness. Because even if he immediately used the Heaven Mending Stone to summon back the Great Emperor-level expert of the Heaven Mending Pavilion, he would be unable to stop this scene. After all, the Great Emperor-level expert in their Heaven Mending Pavilion, even if summoned back, would at most only be at the level of third-generation Great Emperor. Resisting this top expert of the Heavenly God Academy was naturally not as easy as imagined. Xianyuan Wudao even wished to break free from the two top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone before him to block this move for Chu Fan. But how could these two top experts from the Dark Forbidden Zone possibly allow him to break free now? The two top experts quickly circled Xianyuan Wudao, giving him no chance to escape. However, just as Heavenly Absolute's punch was about to land on Chu Fan, a terrifying aura instantly erupted from within the Great Xia Empire. In the next second, a silver-white beam of light was seen slicing through the entire sky. This silver-white beam of light instantly appeared in front of Chu Fan. It then immediately blocked Heavenly Absolute's attack. When the crowd clearly saw the silver-white beam of light before them, everyone froze in place. Because this silver-white beam of light was actually a silver spear. The three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy looked gravely toward the depths of the Great Xia Empire. Fellow Taoist, since you have already made your move, then please show yourself. Heavenly Absolute spoke with a gloomy expression, looking toward the Great Xia Empire. At the same time, he had not expected such a terrifying existence to reside within the Great Xia Empire. Even Earth Absolute and Void Absolute beside him looked toward the depths of the Great Xia Empire with expressions of disbelief. Chapter 657, The Gun Emperor battles the three masters of the Heavenly God Academy. The Human Emperor's tribulation finally appears. At this moment, everyone held their breath, looking toward the depths of the Great Xia Empire, because they all knew that there was likely an incredible existence residing deep within the Great Xia Empire. And Xianyuan Wudao, who was originally preparing to break free from the two top experts from the Forbidden Zone, finally revealed a look of calm on his face at this moment. At the same time, he finally understood why Chu Fan dared to make his breakthrough to the Human Emperor realm so openly. It turned out that the Great Xia Empire's trump card far exceeded his imagination. Just as everyone was anticipating the appearance of this top expert, a domineering and powerful voice echoed from within the Great Xia Empire. This voice was filled with an overbearing and terrifying aura of kingship. You three old, weak, and disabled individuals dare to try and harm the Emperor of my Great Xia Empire? That is utterly ridiculous. Immediately after the voice finished, a burly, handsome middle-aged man slowly appeared in the sky. He gently beckoned, and the silver-white, long spear landed in his hand. At the same time, the terrifying aura emanating from him directly pressured the three absolutes. And at this moment, the three absolutes finally saw the Great Xia Empire's ultimate trump card. Of course, this was only what they believed. This middle-aged man from the Great Xia Empire was none other than Spear Emperor. He gently waved his hand, instructing the alternative path attainment experts from the Heaven Mending Pavilion to return to Chu Fan's side. Then, he lightly sliced forward. Instantly, a terrifying black abyss appeared before him. The next second, Spear Emperor casually grabbed. The three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy immediately followed him into this black abyss. Simultaneously, the terrifying power instantly vanished from the sky. It was as if such terrifying figures had never appeared in this sky before. However, with the disappearance of these individuals, the crowd breathed a sigh of relief. After all, the feeling these few individuals gave them was too terrifying. They felt that even a single glance could wipe out an entire holy land. And after Spear Emperor took away the three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy, the top experts within the Heavenly God Academy no longer dared to make a move. Those middle-stage Great Emperor and late-stage Great Emperors of the Heavenly God Academy wished they could shrink back into their shells. After all, the Great Xia Empire had far too many trump cards. Even the Supreme Being from the Forbidden Zone who had been stirring earlier no longer had any intention of continuing to act. After all, they did not know if there were even more terrifying hidden experts within the Great Xia Empire. If they were to strike, it would likely provoke even more top experts from the depths of the Great Xia Empire to act. In that case, they would have no choice but to throw their lives away. Thinking of this, the Supreme Being from the Forbidden Zone sighed and continued to slumber. After all, they were waiting for the opening of the path to immortality. Since the path to immortality only lasted 100 years, they naturally could not waste their lives because of Chu Fan. As the Supreme Being from the Forbidden Zone chose not to emerge, the top experts of the various major forces present finally relaxed. However, at this moment, they also understood that the final outcome of this great battle will be decided by the fight between the recently departed Spear Emperor and the three top experts of the Heavenly God Academy. After all, if the three top experts of the Heavenly God Academy won this great battle, then even if Chu Fan, the possessor of the human destiny, passed the Human Emperor tribulation, it would be useless. But if the top expert of the Great Xia Empire emerged victorious, then a huge transformation would await the entire central region. More importantly, the supreme beings from the Forbidden Zone would all be annihilated at that time. Thinking of this, many people looked forward to the Great Xia Empire achieving the final victory. While many people were waiting for the outcome of this great battle, Chu Fan, on his side, began his breakthrough. The power within Chu Fan's body became incredibly terrifying. More importantly, He had now directly made a breakthrough to the human emperor realm. This immediately drew down the lightning tribulation from the sky. Limitless thunderclouds now appeared above his head. These lightning tribulations were still emitting a terrifying aura above. Chu Fan himself was completely enveloped by the golden human emperor law. As for the alternative path attainment experts from the heaven-mending pavilion around him, they swiftly moved away from Chu Fan's location. If they remained within the range of Chu Fan's lightning tribulation, they would also have to face this trial alongside him. Moreover, the resulting lightning tribulation would become even more terrifying. Even Chu Fan might not be able to survive it. Of course, these were just their thoughts. At this moment, Chu Fan slowly stood up after sensing the terrifying power within his body. Then he opened his eyes, two golden rays of light shooting forth from him. Following this, a golden light could be seen continuously approaching him from the imperial palace of the Great Xia Empire. The number of these golden lights slowly began to increase. Then, one golden light after another directly adhered to his body. As these golden lights continuously attached themselves to him, a golden battle armor instantly appeared on his body. This golden battle armor instantly made Chu Fan's entire aura even more terrifying. More importantly, after this golden battle armor fully attached to Chu Fan, he became exceptionally majestic. And the process did not end after this golden battle armor adhered to his body. A golden long spear instantly appeared in his hand, and another golden long sword appeared at his waist. The golden long sword was none other than the human emperor sword. The human emperor armor worn by Chu Fan and the golden long spear he held had both reached the limit of the quasi-emperor rank. After enduring this lightning tribulation, they could successfully advance to become ultimate emperor weapons. As Chu Fan, clad in golden battle armor, stood beneath the lightning, the thunder in the sky finally finished brewing. A pillar-sized bolt of lightning was seen descending directly from the sky. Moreover, this bolt of lightning struck Chu Fan directly without the slightest deviation. Seeing this lightning descend, Chu Fan chose not to dodge. Instead, he calmly used his body to receive the bolt of lightning. This lightning tribulation then struck Chu Fan directly. It caused Chu Fan's footsteps to pause momentarily. Nevertheless, Chu Fan held his long spear and gazed intently at the thunderclouds in the sky. Following this, the lightning tribulation in the thunderclouds once again transformed into terrifying bolts of lightning that struck down toward him. Chapter 658 Chu Fan in the Tribulation Transcending, the Absolute Suppression of the Void Emperor. As terrifying lightning tribulation fell from the sky, Chu Fan, holding a long spear, directly faced the lightning tribulation in the sky. His long spear swiftly struck towards the lightning tribulation ahead. The next second, this pillar-like thick lightning tribulation was instantly shattered by the long spear in his hand. After completing all of this, there was no slack in Chu Fan's eyes. Instead, he stared intently at the lightning tribulation in the sky. At this moment, the lightning tribulation in the sky naturally did not stop for a moment. Instead, it kept falling towards Chu Fan's direction. As terrifying lightning tribulation after terrifying lightning tribulation fell from the sky, a terrifying force instantly struck Chu Fan's body again. Fortunately, he was wearing the human emperor armor, so he currently had no injuries on his body. Only the terrifying human emperor law on his body was constantly circulating. Chu Fan, holding his long spear, continuously dealt with the lightning tribulation falling from the sky. His actions seemed to have angered the lightning tribulation in the sky. Thus, the lightning tribulation in the sky began to slowly brew. A terrifying power was continuously emanating from the sky, as if it wanted to completely destroy the entire firmament. Then, a purple-black lightning tribulation instantly fell from the very center of the lightning tribulation. The terrifying power came directly towards Chu Fan. Upon seeing this, a change instantly appeared on Chu Fan's face, because at this moment, he felt a terrifying aura contained within this lightning tribulation. Even he felt a threatening aura. So, he swiftly drew the human emperor's sword from his waist. Then, he directly slashed towards the lightning tribulation in the sky. The terrifying human emperor law instantly collided with the lightning tribulation. The next second, a terrifying force directly sent Chu Fan flying. Fortunately, this lightning tribulation was also completely annihilated by his human emperor law. However, even so, burnt marks appeared on his body. It seems I still can't underestimate the lightning tribulation in the sky. After all, this is the human emperor tribulation. Chu Fan, with a burnt mark on his body, looked up at the lightning tribulation in the sky and spoke, a hint of lingering fear on his face. If he hadn't quickly drawn his human emperor sword just now, he might have already been knocked to the ground. However, This also further ignited Chu Fan's resolve to fight. Then, he, holding the human emperor sword, charged towards the lightning tribulation in the sky. The lightning tribulation also became extremely furious upon seeing this. The terrifying lightning tribulation instantly transformed into streaks of lightning foxes, charging towards Chu Fan. Upon seeing this, Chu Fan continuously wielded the human emperor sword in his hand to resist the lightning tribulation in the sky. Although the power of these lightning tribulation in the sky was extremely terrifying, Chu Fan now had the human emperor law attached to his body, so he could easily withstand these terrifying lightning tribulation in the sky. Moreover, what was more important was that there was a lot of luck around him, constantly helping him share the terrifying lightning tribulation in the sky. Therefore, his current state seemed quite good. However, as the lightning tribulation became more and more numerous, the power of the lightning tribulation also became more and more terrifying. Every bolt of lightning tribulation seemed like a great emperor-level expert launching an attack on Chu Fan. Of course, when a great emperor-level expert launched an attack on Chu Fan did not hesitate at all. Instead, he directly charged towards the lightning tribulation in the sky with his human emperor sword. After all, his current strength was in no way inferior to that of an ordinary late-stage great emperor expert. Therefore, these lightning tribulation in the sky had little effect on him. While Chu Fan was constantly fighting against the lightning tribulation in the sky, the great emperor-level experts of Heavenly God Academy, who were looking at the continuous lightning tribulation in the sky, were also filled with anticipation. Of course, these great emperor-level experts were not anticipating Chu Fan to overcome this lightning tribulation, but rather hoping that this lightning tribulation could completely eliminate Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate. After all, they no longer dared to make a move. Who knew if these lightning tribulation in the sky would directly cause Chu Fan to perish? Moreover, what was more important was that they dared not gamble that there were no other top expert in the Great Xia Empire. Of course, their thoughts were correct. The number of top expert in the Great Xia Empire had already far exceeded their imagination. So if they were to act now, they would definitely die. Therefore, it was the best choice for these great emperor-level experts of Heavenly God Academy not to act. Moreover, what was more important was that the battle in the sky at this moment was also extremely terrifying. Just like great Emperor Luangu at this moment, the aura emanating from him was extremely terrifying. Although his strength and that of the top expert at the Supreme Being level from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him had reached the same level, he became braver the more he fought. After only a short battle, he gained the upper hand. Moreover, what was more important was that the aura of this Supreme Being level expert from the Dark Forbidden Zone was not recognized by this world. Therefore, the power he unleashed now was naturally not as terrifying as the power unleashed by Great Emperor Luangu. Moreover, what was more important was that the law power Great Emperor Luangu was now unleashing had far exceeded this Supreme Being's imagination. After all, the 9 secrets were considered the most top expert offensive means in the entire universe. So, suppressing this Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone was naturally very easy. Of course, the strongest suppression in the current battle was probably on Great Emperor Void's side. Although Great Emperor Void's opponents were 3 Supreme Being from the Forbidden Zone. However, Great Emperor Void's strength was originally a top expert existence within the Great Emperor realm. Moreover, his cultivation had already reached the Great Emperor Perfection realm. So, when battling these 3 Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone, the Void Law emanating from him thoroughly suppressed the terrifying aura on the 3 Supreme Being level experts in front of him. Among them, the Dark Supreme Being with a hint of mysterious black aura in his eyes also looked at Great Emperor Void in front of him with disbelief. He also did not expect Great Emperor Void's strength to be so terrifying. One must know that they had battled Great Emperor Perfection realm experts before. Unfortunately, none of those Great Emperor Perfection realm experts were as powerful as Great Emperor Void. Great Emperor Void's power made them feel incredible. It could even be said that Great Emperor Void's strength had far exceeded their imagination. At this moment, all 3 of them had injuries of varying degrees on their bodies. Among them, the most severely injured was the Supreme Being wearing a green robe. At this moment, his left arm had been completely severed by Great Emperor Void's Void Law. The terrifying Void Law also prevented his left arm from recovering. This greatly reduced his combat power. Chapter 659, The Supreme Being Who Has Reached the Pinnacle of Sublimation, the Battlefield of the Void Emperor. While the other 2 did not suffer such severe injuries, their chests were covered in numerous wounds. More importantly, their exposed bones could be seen on their chests. From this, one could tell how severe the injuries Void Great Emperor had inflicted upon them were. Of course, at this moment, Void Great Emperor still looked at the several people before him with killing intent in his eyes. Then, he took a leisurely step forward. Terrifying Void Law instantly pressed towards the three supreme beings from the dark, forbidden zone. Moreover, these Void Laws completely enveloped the three supreme beings from the dark, forbidden zone. Now, even if they wanted to retreat, they had no way. Furthermore, the ultimate Emperor weapon, Void Mirror, in the sky was also emitting terrifying pressure, constantly suppressing these supreme beings from the forbidden zone. The three supreme beings from the dark, forbidden zone, upon feeling the terrifying Void Law constantly suppressing them, had extremely grim expressions on their faces, because they had not expected a great Emperor-level expert suppression of them to be so terrifying. One must know that their chi was still continuously rising, and because of the suppression of supreme beings from the forbidden zone by this world, the strength they were currently exhibiting was not as powerful as their peak strength. As Void Great Emperor's Void Law rapidly attacked the three supreme being level experts, a terrifying force directly struck the Dark Supreme being wearing a green robe. The next second, the terrifying force directly sent this Dark Supreme being flying. At the same time, a powerful Void Law was instantly left on his chest. The Void Law was constantly corroding his body. The other two Dark Supreme beings were also not having an easy time, because this terrifying Void Giant Palm also landed on them, and the terrifying force simultaneously sent them all flying. Moreover, this terrifying force directly branded them all with the mark of Void Law. As these Void Laws continuously spread across their bodies, these terrifying Void Laws were also constantly destroying their bodies. Among them, the Dark Supreme being emitting a profound chi. His aura became extremely strange at this moment. Then, a blood-red glint instantly appeared in his eyes. He looked at Void Great Emperor in front of him with a strange gaze. Since you are seeking death, then this Supreme will grant your wish. Then he looked at Void Great Emperor with a face full of anger and greed, and after speaking, an even more terrifying aura instantly erupted from his body. Moreover, this even more terrifying aura was continuously rising from his body. This caused the strength of this supreme being from the dark forbidden zone to continuously increase. In just a moment, the strength of this supreme being from the dark forbidden zone had already reached the Great Emperor Perfection realm. Of course, his cultivation was not yet at the Great Emperor realm. It was just that his chi had reached this level. Moreover, after his chi reached the Great Emperor Perfection realm, it was still continuously growing. However, it ultimately did not break through to the realm beyond the Great Emperor Perfection realm. Although the strength of supreme beings from the dark forbidden zone was terrifying. But if they could break through to the realm beyond the Great Emperor Perfection realm, then they naturally could not become these so-called supreme beings from the forbidden zone. So what if you undergo ultimate sublimation? Here, you only have one path, death. Void Great Emperor naturally saw at a glance why the supreme being from the dark forbidden zone in front of him would raise his strength to such a degree. This was the legendary ultimate sublimation. However, even if the supreme in front of him underwent ultimate sublimation, it was not a big problem for Void Great Emperor. He was seen holding the Void Mirror, emitting terrifying Void Law. He rapidly attacked this sublimated supreme being from the dark forbidden zone. The other two supreme beings from the dark forbidden zone, seeing this scene, quickly retreated from this battlefield. After all, the current battle had completely devolved into a battle between peak Great Emperor level experts. They could not help this supreme being from the dark forbidden zone much in this battle. However, the two did not intend to retreat just like that. After retreating a little, the two looked in the direction of Void Great Emperor with a hint of killing intent in their eyes. After all, if given the chance, they would definitely kill this Void Great Emperor. And at this moment, the great battle between Void Great Emperor and this sublimated supreme being from the dark forbidden zone also completely erupted. The strength of the sublimated supreme being from the dark forbidden zone was indeed not to be underestimated. The combat power he was currently exhibiting had far exceeded that of ordinary Great Emperor Perfection Realm experts. Even Void Great Emperor would need a certain amount of time to resolve him. And just as the battle between Void Great Emperor and this sublimated Supreme Being level expert unfolded, the two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone outside were constantly looking for opportunities to launch a sneak attack. Then, the two Supreme Beings quickly launched a powerful strike. A terrifying force directly attacked in the direction of Void Great Emperor. This move even aimed to completely kill Void Great Emperor. And Void Great Emperor, upon feeling this terrifying force, quickly used his Void Mirror to block this attack. And he angrily struck out a palm towards the two Supreme Beings behind him. The terrifying palm seemed to descend from the sky. Then, it directly covered the two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. And the sublimated Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone, seeing this scene, chose not to block this attack for the two Supreme Beings. After all, for them, there was no emotion between Supreme Beings. It could even be said that they might sacrifice other Supreme Beings to gain their own interests. This was the Supreme Being who prioritized interests above all else. However, at this moment, he also had a very good opportunity to act. He was seen rapidly attacking in the direction of Void Great Emperor. At the same time, a black long spear instantly appeared in his hand. This black long spear was constantly emitting an ominous chi. All the chi from his body was instantly poured into this long spear. Then, a terrifying force directly attacked in the direction of Void Great Emperor. Void Great Emperor, seeing this scene, directly punched out in this direction. The terrifying force and this black long spear instantly collided. The moment of impact, the space around them seemed unable to withstand this terrifying force. The entire Void Realm began to tremble in waves. At the same time, void cracks appeared one after another around the several people. Chapter 660. The three Supreme Beings reached the pinnacle of sublimation, a terrifying battle. During the collision between Void Emperor and the sublimated Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone, the two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone who were near them were also directly repelled by this terrifying force. Their existing injuries became even more severe. Even now, the two Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone looked at the battle between Void Emperor and the sublimated Supreme Being with lingering fear in their eyes. Afterward, they watched the battle between Void Emperor and the sublimated Supreme Being from the sidelines. At the same time, they occasionally ambushed Void Emperor and the sublimated Supreme Being. Of course, their main target for ambush was Void Emperor. However, Void Emperor was fighting with increasing ferocity. So, in less than a moment, he had gained the upper hand in his battle with the sublimated Supreme Being. One could even say that if the fight continued to drag on, the sublimated Supreme Being would eventually fall into the hands of Void Emperor. After all, after ultimate sublimation, they cannot prolong the battle for too long. Therefore, even if Void Emperor did not have the upper hand, he could still persevere. But the sublimated Supreme Being could not endure like Void Emperor. As the battle slowly unfolded, the sublimated Supreme Being also discovered this point. A look of anger instantly appeared on his face. However, no matter how much anger appeared on his face at this moment, it was useless, because he could feel that the terrifying power within Void Emperor's body was constantly suppressing him. Although the power from his ultimate sublimation was very strong, it was naturally not as simple as imagined to defeat Void Emperor. He might even eventually be exhausted to death by Void Emperor. Thinking of this, he was both frustrated and furious. Then, he quickly looked at the two Supreme Beings who were constantly ambushing and interfering with Void Emperor. He looked at these two Supreme Beings with anger and grief in his eyes. Then he slowly spoke. If you two do not undergo ultimate sublimation now, all that awaits you is to fall into his hands. His voice was filled with anger and grief. Therefore, this voice also spread throughout the entire universe. Feeling that the sublimated Supreme Being could not hold on for much longer, the two Supreme Beings exchanged glances. Then, A look of determination appeared in their eyes. The next second, two supreme being level powerhouses instantly underwent ultimate sublimation. After all, at this time, they also understood the importance of this battle. If they did not choose ultimate sublimation now, then what awaited them might be annihilation by Void Emperor. Thinking of this, they naturally could not stand idly by. Then, a terrifying aura instantly emanated from both of them. This terrifying aura instantly enveloped them both. Moreover, the auras of the two had completely reached a terrifying level. The next second, the auras of the two reached a level similar to that of the sublimated Supreme being from the Forbidden Zone just now. And the two Supreme beings who had just undergone ultimate sublimation did not hesitate at all, directly charging towards Void Emperor. When Void Emperor saw this scene, there was no worry on his face. Instead, he was constantly battling the sublimated Supreme being in front of him. As for the two sublimated Supreme beings, Void Emperor did not put them in his eyes at this time. After all, at this moment, he could only constantly fight against these three sublimated Supreme beings. As the battle between the three sublimated Supreme beings and Void Emperor unfolded, the terrifying power instantly caused the entire universe to tremble. And the powerhouses in the holy lands below, who witnessed this battle, were filled with disbelief, because they did not expect that after the battle had only lasted for such a short time, three supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone would choose ultimate sublimation. One must know that even when the Dark Turmoil was initiated in the past, the number of these sublimated supreme beings would not be this many. Of course, perhaps at that time, the ultimate emperor weapons of the various holy lands were powerful, but they were only activated by quasi-emperor level powerhouses. So, making these supreme beings undergo ultimate sublimation was naturally not as easy as imagined. Moreover, many quasi-emperors in the Holy Land had expressions of emotion on their faces at this time. They also did not expect that Void Emperor of the Great Xia Empire, facing three supreme beings, could force all three supreme beings to undergo ultimate sublimation. One must know that even if these three supreme beings killed Void Emperor this time, they would still have to return to the Forbidden Zone to continue their slumber. Otherwise, they would only perish. And if they could not kill Void Emperor, and could only severely wound Void Emperor, then they would have no hope of survival. After all, for them to truly survive, they would at least need Void Emperor's life to prolong their current ultimate sublimation. Therefore, the three of them were so fiercely engaged in such a terrifying battle against Void Emperor. And just as Void Emperor was battling the three supreme being level powerhouses who had undergone ultimate sublimation, in another void realm not far from Void Emperor. At this moment, Sun Human Emperor was also exuding a terrifying solar aura, constantly fighting against the three supreme being level existences in front of him. This time, Sun Human Emperor and Void Emperor both chose to fight against three supreme beings. And Sun Human Emperor stood in this universe like a sun. The terrifying aura of the Human Emperor Law also filled the entire world. The Human Emperor Law inherently had a terrifying suppressive effect on supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. Therefore, the three supreme beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him were also severely injured at this time. One of the Dark Supreme beings was even reduced to nothing but a skeleton. However, even so, the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone was still constantly battling Sun Human Emperor. And at this time, the three Supreme Beings naturally also saw the three sublimated Supreme Beings. After seeing the three sublimated Supreme Beings battling Void Emperor, their faces also showed a look of disbelief. However, upon feeling the aura emanating from Sun Human Emperor in front of them, their faces also showed a look of helplessness and grief. Then, the Dark Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone, who was only a skeleton, did not hesitate at all and chose ultimate sublimation. His aura instantly reached an unprecedented level. At the same time, flesh and blood were constantly growing on his skeletal frame. Soon, this flesh and blood filled the skeleton. Chapter 661 Ruthless Heavenly Court Powerhouses. The helplessness of the Supreme Being of the Dark Forbidden Zone. As the flesh and blood of this skeleton expanded, the aura on his body completely reached the Great Emperor Perfection realm. Of course, although the aura of the Supreme had already reached the Great Emperor Perfection realm, his cultivation was not the Great Emperor Perfection realm. After all, these Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone had once obtained the Heavenly Heart Imprint, becoming existences in the Great Emperor realm. Now that they lack the Heavenly Heart Imprint, it is naturally difficult for them to enter the Great Emperor realm again. However, their strength can reach their peak period. And as this Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone chose ultimate sublimation, the two Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone beside him also chose ultimate sublimation without the slightest hesitation. Immediately afterward, 3 terrifying auras instantly enveloped the Sun Human Emperor. When the Sun Human Emperor saw this scene, a look of excitement appeared on his face. Immediately afterward, a dazzling golden precious sword instantly appeared in his hand. This dazzling golden precious sword emitted terrifying Human Emperor law. It could be said that the precious sword in the Sun Human Emperor's hand could also be called the Human Emperor's sword. After all, it was an ultimate Emperor weapon forged by the former Sun Human Emperor using his own law. Immediately afterward, the Sun Human Emperor quickly slashed out a sword strike toward the 3 sublimated Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone in front of him. The terrifying sword light, carrying terrifying Human Emperor law, directly charged toward the 3 Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone in front. The next second, the terrifying power directly landed on the bodies of the 3 Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone. And after feeling this terrifying Human Emperor law, these 3 Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone were immediately sent flying. However, they currently did not suffer significant injuries. This was because all the injuries on their bodies had been completely recovered after ultimate sublimation. They were seen quickly taking out their respective weapons. One Supreme Being from the Forbidden Zone was holding a black mirror in his hand. However, it could be sensed that this black mirror carried terrifying law. The other Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone was holding a long saber in his hand. The aura emanating from the long saber had also reached the level of an ultimate Emperor weapon. As for the last Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone, he was holding a spear several zhang long. The tip of the spear was emitting terrifying radiance. The next second, the 3 Supremes directly charged toward the Sun Human Emperor, wielding their weapons. The terrifying power instantly caused violent tremors throughout the entire Void Realm. Moreover, the terrifying battle completely affected this piece of heaven and earth. The great battle between the 3 sublimated Supreme Beings and the Sun Human Emperor had officially begun. Furthermore, the fluctuations generated by this battle far exceeded those produced during their previous clash. This was because, although the Sun Human Emperor's strength had reached a terrifying level in the previous battle, these 3 Supremes had not undergone ultimate sublimation. Therefore, the battle that just occurred was naturally inferior compared to the battle happening now. And as these 3 Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone also chose ultimate sublimation, the great battle in the sky became extremely terrifying. Just as the Sun Human Emperor was engaging in a fierce battle with these 3 sublimated Supreme Beings, the terrifying chi and blood power emanating from the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body and the Great Accomplishment Hegemon Body in the sky was continuously shaking the entire Void Realm. Moreover, the strength of both the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body and the Great Accomplishment Hegemon Body far surpassed that of ordinary people. Currently, both of them were facing 2 Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. Furthermore, the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body was emitting a blood-red aura mixed with a golden aura. Soon, this golden chi and blood power directly enveloped the entire sky. The Great Accomplishment Sacred Body also directly blasted a punch toward the 2 Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front of him. Immediately afterward, a golden fist strike directly charged toward the 2 Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone. The terrifying chi and blood power instantly swept across the entire firmament. The aura emanating from his body instantly caused the surrounding space to tremble. The 2 Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front did not choose ultimate sublimation. Instead, they battled the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body in front of them using their fastest speed. As for the Great Accomplishment Hegemon Body on the other side, he appeared extremely overbearing at this moment. The aura emanating from him was continuously impacting the surrounding Void Realm. Moreover, he clenched his fists and charged toward the 2 Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone in front. Every one of his punches was a solid, flesh-striking blow. Thus, a terrifying battle instantly broke out between the 2 sides. Of course, the 2 Supreme Beings from the Dark Forbidden Zone facing him also did not choose ultimate sublimation. After all, they had not yet reached that stage. Currently, the most terrifying battle was likely the one involving Tianzi. This was because Tianzi's strength inherently belonged to the absolute peak existence. Although he was not in the Great Emperor realm right now, his strength was not weaker than that of an ordinary Great Emperor in the middle or late stage. The aura emanating from Tianzi was extremely terrifying. At the same time, the world tree in his hand emitted world law, continuously trapping the two supremes in front of him. Furthermore, besides these two supremes, terrifying auras were constantly erupting in front of Tianzi. Of course, even so, Tianzi showed no expression on his face. This was because the strength of the two supremes Tianzi was facing was also extremely terrifying. As the world law continuously trapped the two supremes in front of him, the terrifying auras emanating from Tianzi continuously descended upon the two supremes. The next second, the head of one supreme was instantly severed completely by the world law wielded by Tianzi. The head of this supreme, being from the Forbidden Zone, fell directly from the sky. However, just as his head was falling mid-air, it was immediately sucked back by a terrifying force. The next second, the supreme being from the Forbidden Zone retrieved his head. Then, with a terrifying smile on his face, he pressed his head back onto his shoulders. After completing this, he looked at Tianzi with a hint of fury in his eyes. However, at this moment, he also understood the extent of Tianzi's strength. Therefore, this supreme being from the Dark Forbidden Zone looked helplessly at the supreme being from the Dark Forbidden Zone beside him. The next second, the two immediately joined forces and charged toward the world law in front of them. When Tianzi saw this scene, he gently struck forward with the world tree in his hand. The terrifying power instantly caused the surrounding space to become turbulent. At the same time, the world tree in Tianzi's hand directly smashed onto the bodies of the two supremes. The terrifying power directly sent the two supremes flying.